Welcome to the Weekly Stuff Podcast with Jonathan Lack.
And Sean Chapman.
We are here to talk about stuff.
Yes, we are.
Sort of missed a week, sort of didn't, because we had our last podcast on a Thursday, and then it was hard to meet again, and so we just decided to wait a week.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. But we're probably going to have two-ish... We got this podcast on Monday, and then we got another one coming soon. We're not sure when, but we're going to review the last Persona movie.
Yeah, we just have to block out the time to watch it and podcast it in the same day.
Yep, and I think that's going to be its own episode, definitely, because it's not just going to be about that movie. Now we're going to have to talk about the whole project together, which is going to be a lot of fun. So that is coming up. I did get the Blu-ray in very promptly from Right Stuff, which is great because it was a real crapshoot with these 4 movies. Now that I've gotten them all, 2 of the movies came very promptly after release date, and 2 of them would take 2 weeks after it came out. And I understand it's a weird item that's sort of an import, sort of not, because it's this weird international edition that has the English stuff, but is mostly just the Japanese packaging. Mm-hmm. And I haven't shown you it yet. They went all out for that last one. It's got some extra stuff.
Well, for how expensive Blu-rays are in Japan, they deserve, or they owe it to their customers to package the shit out of those things.
Really, I feel like every Blu-ray in Japan should come with, the director will come to your house and just sit down and have a chat with you.
Yeah,
make you
just,
dinner.
Personally thank you, just shake your hand. Yeah.
Yeah. People, they're committed in Japan to their home media. If you're going to buy home media in Japan, you are committed.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Absolutely. All right. But what are we talking about today? Kind of a grab bag of topics.
A lot of stuff has happened.
Yes. A lot of stuff. So we got a lot of news. We've got some just personal stuff, like games we've been playing. And then we are going to talk about the movie Suicide Squad.
I mean, more specifically, Jonathan, you're going to talk about the movie Suicide Squad because you're an idiot, saw all those reviews, and then went to see the movie anyways. I, being an intelligent, rational, sapient individual, saw the reviews, remembered Batman v Superman, is like, I'm not going to fucking see this movie. I'm not going to waste my time and money on that shit.
I thought it couldn't be as bad as Batman v Superman. I was able to sit through Batman v Superman. It did not caused me all that much physical pain in the moment, even though it angered me afterwards. But it's a movie I got over fairly quickly, I feel like, once I reviewed it and talked about it with you.
Yeah.
And I thought, I was intellectually curious in this Suicide Squad thing, because it was just... I wanted to know what the movie was.
Okay, yeah.
With all those trailers that were so different, this fucking year of marketing blitz, which we're going to have to talk about, I wanted to know, and that's why I went to see it. And I regret it. You can read my written review on the site, which is more eloquent than I'm going to be here, because I've been trying to think about this. I don't know the last movie that made me this angry. I don't get angry about movies anymore. I feel like I'm just past that point in my life.
Right.
I'm able to pretty quickly get over it. And you hear us get angry on the podcast. I'm not going to say it's a performative thing, but this is the space in which we do it,
Yeah, exactly. It's because we care a lot about movies and stuff, and it's fun to have the conversations. But like you say, after we do the podcast on Amazing Spider-Man 2 or Batman v Superman, I'm not going throughout my day fuming about the fucking fight scene at the end of Batman v Superman was awful. I don't it's. All that emotion is put into the podcast, and it's purged, and it's done, and we go on with our lives.
Exactly, and Suicide Squad, I wasn't able to do that with. I wrote the review the next morning, and normally I would write the review the night of, and I was trying to not do it. I just don't want to forget about it.
Right.
I don't even want to engage with it. And the next morning, I could not get this piece of shit out of my head, so I wrote the review, and then I've kept talking about it, and we have actually gotten a lot of comments and questions of when is the Suicide Squad podcast coming.
Right.
So it's, I will talk about it. Sean will ask me questions because I can probably satiate your curiosity about the movie that way.
Yeah. And I feel like I've come out on top in this deal by getting to find out what the movie is, because I had that curiosity as well, but without actually having to watch the movie. What a beautiful age we live in.
Yeah, I did a bad thing watching that movie.
Yeah,
I'm still in shock. It's one of the worst movies I've ever seen, and I've been thinking about this, and I think I'm pretty confident in this statement now. It is the worst movie I've paid to see.
Jeez.
It is possible that in a theater, I should say. It's possible I've seen worse movies in other formats, maybe at press screenings where I'm invited, and it's less about me wanting to go to it than a work thing. But even then, it's bad for many, many reasons. We will get into them. But that's one topic. Another topic is No Man's Sky, which for the PS4 came out this week. I actually haven't talked to you about it at all.
Yeah, we haven't talked about this game at all.
I haven't honestly played a ton of it because it lost my interest pretty quickly. What have you thought about No Man's Sky?
I fucking love No Man's Sky. I think it's one of the best games that's come out this year by far.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, in what is a very strong year. I'm really excited to talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. If you're that enthusiastic, I might have to go back and try to get into it some more.
Yeah.
Did not grab me.
Yeah, I think it's a very niche game that is not going to appeal to a lot of people because I think it's doing like very specific stuff. And while it is a game that is so broad, it is also a game that I think is very clearly an indie game that is made by a small team that has a very clear idea about what it's trying to make and what it's trying to present. Totally. I think that's really fascinating. It was also a game that is sold and is like $60 on a disc and was marketed by Sony as this big AAA release when it's not that at all. It's far more similar to something like Inside than it is to like fucking Call of Duty or Elite Dangerous or something.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's part of my frustration with it is less about the game itself than the media fucking blitz.
The conversation around this game drives me literally insane.
It does, and it made me apathetic towards it before I even opened the disc. And I know I should be able to separate those things. It does get hard, especially as gaming journalism gets more and more annoying, frankly.
Yeah, and like every single gaming website, like a week before No Man's Sky came out, every single thing on like the front page was a different No Man's Sky thing.
Polygon, I don't like to call out individual outlets.
Right.
I think there was a day where Polygon had 12 articles on its main page about No Man's Sky, down to stuff like, we don't like No Man's Sky running button. Here's how to fix it.
Yeah.
That's not an article.
No.
That is not a standalone piece of content.
Yeah.
And it's just it's the noise on the internet that you should be contributing positively to, whether you like or dislike the game, maybe write a more in-depth think piece about it and not 50 articles about whether or not the patch fixed it, which doesn't affect anyone except you guys.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah, it is like, but clearly, I think it was the similar thing happened around Destiny's launch, where No Man's Sky and Destiny are both games that you can tell generate a huge amount of traffic purely on the number of articles that are being written about it. It's like an evolutionary fact at some point. It's like these these websites have had to evolve and adapt to their environment and find a new food source. Like 2 years ago, it was Destiny. This year, it's No Man's Sky.
Yeah. Well, and here's another reason. I'm going to back up. I think I'm becoming a bit of a misanthrope. It's I hate this about myself,
welcome to the club.
but it's just like, I've had a bad couple weeks for other reasons, and I think it's just combined with that shitty Suicide Squad movie and just seeing the way the internet talks about stuff. What I really need to do is like an internet detox and just get off fucking line.
Yeah. Get off the grid. Just go in a cabin in a mountain somewhere.
And then maybe I should play No Man's Sky and just enjoy it or not enjoy it, but for what it is and not for what it represents to the world and the industry. Because that's honestly, of course, how you should approach any game.
Yeah.
But so that's my. There are pockets in this discussion, and not about No Man's Sky. Maybe the discussion around it, but not the game. The game inspires no anger whatsoever in me. It did not inspire all that much enthusiasm, but I'm not deep enough in to really maybe make that decision yet.
Right.
But with other things, I might sound a little angry. So that's the mood I'm in. But the other reason I didn't get that deep into No Man's Sky yet is I did something stupid.
Okay, yeah. This happens sometimes.
And last weekend, I knew this No Man's Sky, big game. All the space to go through. It's going to take a lot of time to play.
Yes. 18 quintillion planets. Takes a while.
Yes. But I'm like, normally I would block off time for a game that I know we're going to play and talk about.
Yeah.
And instead that weekend, I was super bored. I'd finished the games I was playing.
Yeah.
Like I finished Abzu, for instance, which I talked about last week. Mm-hmm. Very good game. It's like about a 2-hour game when you play the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I went back and did some of the collectible stuff, but at a certain point,
those games aren't about the collectibles. It's like getting the collectibles in Inside or something like that.
I'm not saying that as a knock on the game. It's not the kind of game that makes me want to do that. I would love to maybe sit down and play through the whole thing again fresh, but not go through and like obsessively. I just don't think that's what the game is to me.
Yeah, like because Journey, like the thing I liked about Journey is that it has some like collectible things in it, but they're not like it doesn't track it. Like it's just sort of almost more like power-ups than they are collectibles. So it rewards you if you want to explore the spaces, but it's not like you like get it and then it pops up at the corner or something, or you get an achievement for finding all the things that make your scarf longer. I thought Journey did it the right way, and a lot of indie games like have that. Like Inside was the last one that I played that made me feel this way, where it's like, you don't need these collectibles. And to me as the player, when I stumbled upon a couple of them, it felt like these collectibles feel like they're just here so that some like hypothetical internet person A will you can argue against them when they're like, oh, this game's only 3 hours long, it's not worth $20. It's like, but no, they're collectibles, so it's like 5 hours long?
Yes.
Like, that's what it feels like to me. I don't know what the reasoning is, obviously, on the development side. But.
No, I totally get it. And so anyway, I like Abzu a lot. My thoughts have not changed. I think it's a very beautiful game, very lyrical game, and I think it's pretty perfect at the length it is. It winds up telling a little more of a story than I was thinking, but it's a really nice little character story with you basically and this shark. And it's very heartwarming, and I don't know...
And then the shark eats you.
I don't know if it's a great game, and I don't think if it necessarily needs to be. It's just a nice, really unique little experience. Yeah. And if you're into that sort of thing, it's one of those things that I think we just come to the PS4 to kind of expect. And
they get a couple of games like this every year or so.
Yes, and I like that about the system and about games in general now. But that weekend, I kind of finished that. I didn't have a lot else to play. I was still trudging through Stardew Valley, and at a certain point... this was the same weekend I saw Suicide Squad.
Okay.
Saw Suicide Squad Friday night, wrote my review Saturday morning, was still angry, so I spent most of that day sitting on the couch watching through Season 4 of Gilmore Girls and playing Stardew Valley.
That's just what I assumed you were doing, Jonathan.
This was
just
like,
in my imagination, you're always just watching Season 4 of Gilmore Girls while you're playing Stardew Valley.
It was like ultimate recovery mode. Like, go to my ultimate comfort food show, play a game that... It takes absolutely no intellectual taxing, but Stardew Valley got unhealthy for me. Where I respect that game and the people who love it, and I get it. It was unhealthy for me on the level of I was playing it to deaden my mind, and not to really go into it. And it just kind of the grind of that game is not all that interesting to me, and I didn't want to engage with it. But I was 18 hours in. On my Steam counter.
That's a significant amount of time.
And I'm like, I have to pull myself away from this game or it's going to kill me.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I love Gilmore Girls, but I'm not even paying attention to the show at a certain point. Luke and Lorelai finally got together, and I was just picking radishes in Stardew Valley.
Yeah,
I'm not
crazy.
My priorities are askew.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was looking for another game to play. And I got my fancy new Vita that I talked about last week.
Right, yeah.
And it's a really nice system. And I have the Final Fantasy X HD remaster for that.
Okay.
But I never played it. I started it just sort of to satiate my curiosity. I don't even know what this game kind of looks like. And I was not intending to play the game. I was intending to start the game. I'm 20 hours in and I love this game.
Okay. You're one of those people, I guess.
I guess I'm one of those. I can defend it. I mean, okay, let's recap. I love Final Fantasy X. I'm really into it. And I'm having a blast, and I'm having trouble tearing myself away from it for what... And it's again, this is not a knock on No Man's Sky. Just there are not two games more different than Final Fantasy X and No Man's Sky. It's tough to toggle back and forth, you know? Even in the moments when I've been really engaged in No Man's Sky, it's tough to go back to Final Fantasy X, so I'm kind of focusing on Final Fantasy.
Right.
And this was part of just a larger kind of intellectual thought experiment I've been doing all year, which is kind of revisiting certain Final Fantasy games, because I am so excited for 15, and I'm so interested in this game, and I played a good chunk of 7, and I had to kind of put that aside for some other things, but I'm just trying to get a feeling for more of the 3D era of Final Fantasy, which I had mostly known through 13. Which is, I think...
Which is an outlier.
An outlier, and I think a low point for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But 10 is a high point for many people, and I was so curious, and I really, really like this game. I think it is, for one, just the number one thing, I think it has maybe the best battle system in any JRPG I've ever played.
Sure.
I think it's absolutely fantastic. I think when we were talking about Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth, you kind of referenced Final Fantasy X as just a way to kind of show what it was kind of going for, and I think... It's up there. If I'm thinking of my favorite JRPG battle systems, Digimon is up there, definitely. Persona 3 and 4.
Yeah.
And this one. Because this is, if you look at the arc of Final Fantasy, from 4 to 9, they were doing variations on the active time battle system.
Which is stupid. I hate the fucking... Active time battle system makes no fucking sense to me.
I think there are better versions of it and less good versions. It's never as great as non-active time battle systems. But
it just doesn't add anything to the fucking turn-based... battle mechanics, just like Final Fantasy X. I don't like the story and stuff of that game, but you're right, the battle system in that game is perfect.
It's amazing. I mean, they went back to basically turn-based, but with some twists that keep it so fresh. basically the basics of it is it's turn-based, and you have on the right, like in Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth, a list of basically who's going to have a turn.
Yeah.
So your teammates and then the enemies. And so it's very, very tactical. It does not rush you. It really encourages you to think about your moves. It gives you all the information. You have magic, but you also have special abilities. The leveling is done through this thing called the sphere grid, which I actually also, it looks intimidating at first. Once you get into it, I think it's a really, really inspired way to do that.
Yeah, like the sphere grid just feels like an overcomplicated, like an overly convoluted skill tree. Like I never felt like the sphere grid added much to...
I like it, and I like it just in terms of how you see things go along. You're very invested in which things you are going to be upgrading, and you see it directly. It's not obfuscated behind walls where you can go look at where your stats are going up, but you're probably not incentivized to. So I like that about it. And so there's this feedback between the leveling and what you're doing there and then into the game. But I think the smartest thing about it, bar none, is that you can switch in and out teammates on a whim. And so at any time you can just press L1 and you can bring in another teammate. And not only can you use, in one fight, all 7 team members, you are incentivized throughout the game to make those switches. And it's a thing that I'd never maybe realized was a problem with JRPGs, but in the back of my mind was, which is that so many JRPGs, including ones I really love, do this great job of having you build a team and have all these characters you love, but then in the way they level, you really only use 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Like, this is a problem, I think, in Persona 3 and 4, for instance. It's one of the only things I dislike about those games is I wish there was an easier way to kind of swap in teammates.
Yeah, because in those games and with most JRPGs, as you say, like, you have to fairly early on in the game decide what your team is, because if you don't, your levels are going to be completely unbalanced. So like by the time you collect the last team member in by the time you get Naoto in Persona 4, you have to decide if Naoto's going to be in that team or not, and then that is the last chance you have to change up your team score consistency. Past that point, you are just sticking with who you got.
Yes, exactly. And so that can be a thing that is just a little irksome, I think.
Yeah.
And with Final Fantasy X, like I said, it's the 7 people are there for a reason, and it feels like everyone is contributing to the fight equally. And the fights are built in such a way, like the entire system is so smart that in some areas maybe you're focusing more on Lulu, your spellcaster, and maybe in some areas you're focusing more on Waka, who throws the fucking blitzball and things like that. And so, but it is balanced. There's never going to be like a giant stretch of the game, at least so far, where you just can't use certain characters. It kind of goes back and forth, and it knows when to switch things up. I think overall the game is exceptionally well paced for this kind of game, and it's another thing that impresses me about it. But that battle system is just addictive. It's smart. It really gets past that sort of ludonarrative dissonance element of everyone's there and everyone's fighting, but in most JRPGs, in the back of your mind, but only those 3 people are really doing the fighting.
Right, yeah.
And so that's a really nice part about it. And I think you get a more intimate and engaging relationship with your team. So I like that.
It sucks, then, that most of your team are awful characters.
Okay, so I do want to hear a little bit of your opinion, because I know you've talked about the game before. I don't remember exactly what your position was on it.
To be fair, I have not played this game in a long time, because the only time I played it was like the original PS2 release with a friend at their house, because I didn't have a PS2.
Okay.
So that's where a lot of my opinion comes from. My opinion is basically Tidus is the most annoying, frustrating, grating main character I think I've seen in any JRPG, and that includes Squall from Final Fantasy VIII, who is exactly what his name is. He is just Squall. Like, that's that character. So I hate Tidus. Waka is insufferable. Lulu is fucking Lulu. Rika is a really annoying character. Riku, whatever. Who gives a shit? She's so annoying.
I give a shit. I couldn't disagree more with this.
I mean, the problem is, I can't argue very, in depth about it, because, like I said, I haven't played it in such a long time. Specifics are pretty much gone for me.
And I went into this with your opinion in my head. And I knew the thing about Tidus.
I mean, it is the right opinion.
Okay. Anyway, I went into this with the thought about Tidus, and I couldn't disagree more. I think in the early hours, Tidus is positioned as someone who is intentionally insufferable, because he is sort of a spoiled brat. He's this blitzball star in this sort of futuristic setting where the entire world relies on what they call machina, and he really has no stakes in his life, nothing to live for, and he's very shallow. And his arc over the course of the game, and it starts very fast. They don't wait to start this arc. Is his maturation and having something to fight for, and kind of becoming a more three-dimensional person. And I think it accomplishes a lot of different things. And this is in tandem with the game is actually told in media res. You start near the end of the game where they have arrived at the shores of Zanarkand, the destroyed area Tidus is originally from, and he is narrating in the past. So you have this sort of older, mature Tidus talking over these events. And so you have this, right from the beginning, I feel like you are told this is not who Titus is going to be the entire game, because you have these reflections from a guy who is thinking much more thoughtfully about what has happened to him. And I think it accomplishes a couple different things. One, you're able to have a protagonist who is, in a break for the Final Fantasy series, chipper and enthusiastic about things.
Sure.
And not a total wet blanket.
Yeah, he's not Squall.
He's not Squall. He's not, and I love Cloud. He's not Cloud. He's not in that sort of mold that you get that I think sometimes works beautifully, as in Final Fantasy IV with Cecil, who has this sort of redemptive arc.
Yeah, like Cecil's, he's not that kind of, he's not the Squall type. I think he's more, he's like more specifically stoic than he is like brooding, you know?
But I think they're on a spectrum. I think the stoic, if you're not careful, can go easily into cartoonish brooding. Yeah, is all I'm saying.
But I don't think Cecil ever.
No,
there. I think his character is very clear because he's like the straight, like he's like the King's man kind of guy. You know?
Absolutely, but I can also see the evolution from Cecil to Cloud to Squall to characters like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think Titus is, and I like Titus on that level. I think he has interesting relationships with people, and then I think the setup for this story, and I realize I'm talking about a 15-year-old game many of you have played, but for those who aren't familiar and maybe just want a new perspective on it, you know, it's a really interesting story, and it's amazing to me to contrast this with Final Fantasy 13 and how different these games are in strengths and weaknesses to me. Where, you know, anyway, let's explain the story really quick. So Titus, like I said, blitzball star in this you know, kind of undefined setting, but it's this sort of futuristic world. And then he is basically there's this giant monster that comes called Sin, and it destroys his city, and he is sent 1,000 years into the future into this land called Spira, which is basically the same world, but 1,000 years later, and a lot has changed, obviously. Yeah. And they are beset by sin all the time, and the whole world basically does not rely on Machina anymore because they believe it's what brought sin down on them, because they were this like crass society that had no respect for nature and the world around them and for life. And so now they're trying to get away from that. And basically every 10 years, a summoner, who in this case Yuna is the sort of main focal point of the game, has to go and basically do this pilgrimage to defeat sin, and it'll bring about a period of calm before a new sin is born. And part of why I was actually interested in playing Final Fantasy X is because a lot of people, in writing about I Am Setsuna, which is the game I'd praised very highly, the RPG for the PS4 and PC that came out earlier in July. Yeah. A lot of people had mentioned Final Fantasy X and that it clearly draws some inspiration in its plot setup, and they were totally right, because that is part of it. And you know, I talked about one of the things I loved in I Am Setsuna is there's this pervasive sense of sadness to the game, because it is this world that is perpetually sort of just fucked, and people are trying to find ways around it, and the best band-aid they have is this human sacrifice system. Yeah. And Final Fantasy X does something kind of similar, and I think because of its length and its scope, it's even more ambitious in what it's trying to do, in that Final Fantasy X, I think if you look at the marketing and stuff, and everything I'd seen of it just in pop culture at large, it seems like a very happy, chipper game, because you've got someone like Titus as your lead. It's very colorful. Sure. It's got Tetsuya Nomura's, you know, character design, which is very, very anime to the extreme, and everything.
Titus's fucking pants.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Crazy. Stuff like that, and I didn't know, and I was not prepared for, and this is what drew me into the game, the sheer level of sadness that is at the heart of Final Fantasy X, and you just are, and it is this tour of the world, and so you see these areas and these different cultures and how they cope with the attacks of sin, and Blitzball, which seems like the dumbest thing in the early part of the game,
and it is,
becomes this really kind of powerful thematic unifier for the game, in that, as they explain, it's the thing these people throw themselves into because the world is so fucked. It's the one thing they can all get together and do and bring some joy in. And I actually think it's a very smart commentary on sports in the larger world. Sure. And sort of the role of sports in entertainment and how it thinks about that. And I think having Titus and Waka and certain other characters be tied to Blitzball, again, at first seems really silly. And you realize the people making this game, they had a thought. It's not just a quirk. They knew where they were going with this thematically. And at the point I am at in the game, I trust this story so implicitly because I think it keeps getting deeper and more interesting, and these characters keep getting deeper and more interesting. I think each character is very well defined from the start. This is not a JRPG that fucks around and waits 20 hours to get your team to you. 6 of the 7 are there very early on. Riku you have a little bit early on, and then she's gone for a while and then comes back, but I think that's at like the 13-hour mark. So it's pretty early in the overall span of this game that you have everyone there. And so they really get to enrich these characters. And I think, characters like Waka are very interesting to me because he's this guy who, again, whoever they are on the surface is not who they turn out to be. And I think that's kind of a theme of the game.
Sure.
And Waka being someone who is sort of beloved by everyone around him. He is a father figure to this community. He's the leader of this blitzball league, and you think he's just kind of a happy island dude, and it turns out he's actually kind of a religious zealot, and he has a lot of doubt and self-hatred, and he's lost his brother, and he is sort of using Titus to almost replace his lost brother. There's a lot of very Freudian themes in this game. And I already talked about Titus. You have the character Sir Aron, who comes in, and he's famous actually for Kingdom Hearts, I realized, because my brother walked in and was like, that's a Kingdom Hearts character. I'm like, it's a Final Fantasy character, but I assume he was in Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah.
Things like that. So
Auron is definitely, he's like the popular character from Final Fantasy X that a lot of people latched onto.
He's a very cool design, and he's interesting in how he relates to Titus and Titus's father, which is another aspect of the game I rolled my eyes at first, and then it won me over at a certain point because it's a really interesting story of this abusive father and this neglected son, and how this father went through a similar journey as Titus and tried to redeem himself and really couldn't, and now Titus is kind of picking up that torch and also becoming his own person. I just think the game at every level, it defeats whatever stereotypes I had of it. And in addition to being a game that plays beautifully, that is paced to just utter perfection for this kind of game, where you are never doing any one thing for too long, and that includes cutscenes, which if you've played Final Fantasy XIII, you know Square Enix can go to the wrong side of that line. And, if Final Fantasy XIII is going down corridors just fighting monsters until you get to the next cutscene, and usually you play for like 5 minutes and then watch 40 minutes, it's the kind of thing that Metal Gear Solid would look at and go, geez, tone it down a little bit, guys. So that's just interesting to me. And then on a technical level, the game is a game from 2001, and I'll talk about some of that. It is stunningly beautiful at times. Like, it is a game that has aged in some ways, and in other ways, it's awe-inspiring. Some of the vistas and the art design in this game, like, Tetsuya Nomura as a character designer can be very extravagant, zipper heavy and things like that. But I think the overall design of the worlds his games take place in are really fascinating to me and interesting and beautiful. And while I am playing the HD remaster on I started on Vita and I wound up getting the PS4 version because I found it for like $10. Right. And on PS4 it looks even more gorgeous. But of course this is rooted in the PS2 stuff. They didn't go in and reanimate everything. And I'm amazed consistently that this came out in 2001. The summon animations, oh my fucking god. I cannot believe a game in the year 2001 on the PS2 was able to do anything as technically intensive and just amazing as those summon animations. Which is another thing that, like, summons in Final Fantasy were always confusing to me because I didn't know why you should use them.
Right.
In Final Fantasy X, they're built into the story and the gameplay in a way that is really, really interesting and fun. And again, those animations of both the summons themselves and then the attacks they do are so crazy cool. And then there are technically janky things about it. It is a game that is trying to be a big 3D cinematic game at a time when you could only do so much of that. Right. And so you have cutscenes that have sort of weird staging and editing, and the voice acting in the dub is bad for the large part. And I was looking into it, and there was a recent article that came out. I forget, I read like a secondhand version of it, so I forget where it was originally done, but it was basically someone interviewed several translators from this era who had to adapt games to the English market. And they were talking about with Final Fantasy X in particular, at one point, like near the game's release, they had to throw out a third of the script and their acting because there was basically this glitch or just this problem with the coding of the game where to get the lines and the movements working the way they wanted them to, you had to, in adapting the Japanese to the English, you could only have a voice clip that was the exact length of the original MP3 file for the Japanese version.
And so that's unfortunate considering how completely different Japanese and English are as languages.
Yes, so it completely limits and stilts a lot of what they have to do because they can't even try to match the lips. They can't elongate things. They can't shorten things. They were severely technically limited. And knowing that, I'm actually impressed that there are as many moments as there are where I think the voice acting shines through and characters are built through it. But then you have moments where Titus just sort of has to shout a long, complex line. And I think and I see where you can get the Titus is annoying because some of that is just the voice acting doesn't allow him to be more than that sometimes, and it's too bad. Even though I think there's more to it than that. So if I had to make a recommendation with this kind of thing, I think if you're someone who sort of struggles to go back to a game like that, and that is just sort of too outdated for you, I don't think you're going to get over that. But I'm someone who's very interested in games of this era and of all eras, and so I'm kind of able to see past that, and I really I'm loving this game. I think it's very fascinating, especially as, I've been doing a lot of sort of research and learning about this. I'm so fascinated in that transition between series that were pioneers in the 2D gaming era and then became pioneers of the early 3D era.
Right.
And while Final Fantasy VII is technically the first 3D Final Fantasy game because it's got 3D polygons, it's such a kind of small evolution in a lot of ways over the 2D style because there's only so much they could do. Again, most of that game is static JPEGs.
Yeah.
So Final Fantasy X really is the first of these big evolutions for the series. And with Final Fantasy 15 coming out being what looks like another very, very big evolution for that series, it's just very interesting for me to go back to it. And I'm having a lot of fun. So anyway...
I'm glad you're enjoying Final Fantasy X as much as you are because, as you know, they made 2 of them. So
they do.
This will be a long journey for you.
10-2 is on that disc if I choose to play it.
Well, I mean, you have to now. You have to find out what happens at the end, and you can't just beat Final Fantasy X-2. You have to do like the super 100.2% completion or whatever, and talk to like every character in the game or whatever the fucking ridiculous requirements there were to see the true super secret ending. That is really dumb and basically doesn't make any sense.
I can probably just use YouTube.
Yeah, I could tell you what it is, but it would spoil what happens at the end of Final Fantasy X because it just rewrites what happens at the end of Final Fantasy X.
Okay, well, anyway. But yeah, I totally get where you're coming from when you say what you have about the game.
Yeah.
But because early on it was starting to kind of fulfill what I had heard from you, and I think it very quickly starts subverting that. And so I think it's a really beautiful game, and I'm very glad I'm playing it, even though it's distracting me from the newer and shinier things in the world. Sometimes, I don't know, just with art like this, sometimes you're called to something, and it's tough to pull yourself away from it.
Sure.
So.
Okay.
Yeah. That's my experience with Final Fantasy X.
Well, while you were playing a Square Enix game, I was playing another game published by Square Enix. I was playing the new Hitman.
They publish a very diverse set of games.
Yeah, because they have like IDOS or whatever, so they get they have like Deus Ex Mankind Divided coming out later this year is also a Square Enix game. I always have to remind myself they have this like very accomplished Western division now as well. But yeah, so I mean, I'm not going to go super deep into Hitman stuff because I talked about it a lot last time, and my opinion on the game has not changed. I still love it. I love it more now. But basically, an update on where I am. I have gotten level 20 on all the maps, which is basically how it's set up, is each map has an experience level associated with it, 1 to 20, and you get experience on a map by completing challenges, and most of the challenges are stuff like, kill this guy by dropping a toilet on his head, or kill this person by shooting them with an antique Spanish cannon, or kill this person by, knocking them out and then throwing them into a wood chipper kind of thing, and then you get, 5,000 experience points and stuff like that. So I now have basically completed all the level 20 stuff I needed to do on all the maps, and I want to go back at some point and get some of more of the challenges that I didn't get that are the harder ones. But so I did all that. I've played the shit out of all of those maps, and man, that game is so good. The amount of freedom it allows you, and the incredibly satisfying learning curve that game has of going into the map for the first time and just kind of walking in and having no idea where anything is, having no idea how it's set up, and having no idea what kind of opportunities will present themselves to you, and just kind of fumbling through and barely scraping through and getting past some guards and finding a really good disguise somewhere, and then finally sort of piecing together some sort of ragtag assassination to then, once you are where I am at the game, I can walk into any of those maps and I can spawn in all these different locations that I've unlocked, and I can know, okay, if I spawn here, I can go up here and I can get this bodyguard outfit by knocking this dude and pushing him off the edge, and then I can go over here, and if I hit this thing, it will lure this target this way, and the amount that you learn about how to manipulate the targets in this environment and how to maneuver the environment in a skillful way, and just finding all these weird interconnected pathways that at first you couldn't see. The levels look completely different to me now coming out the other side of this level 20 thing than I was going in, and that's when you know a game has great level design, is when once you've played it enough, you feel like you own that level and have mastered that level, and yet still sometimes all of a sudden you walk around a bush and see that there's a ladder taking connecting this part of the map to another part of the map that you thought you had to walk a 2-minute route around to get to, and you're well, fuck, that's how you do this challenge, is I need to get this person down here and go up here, and that's when I can get them in range so that I can shoot them with this Spanish antique cannon in a dilapidated tower on this hilltop. So yeah, the Hitman is just a great, great game. If you haven't, if you are curious about it and listening to this, the fourth map, which is in Bangkok, comes out in a couple of days now. I think it's on Tuesday or Wednesday. So I'll have to drop No Man's Sky for a bit to dig into that. Oh, and then also I in Hitman, I got my first elusive target mission, which is a sort of time-limited missions that they've been putting out periodically since the release. It's been about like one a month. And so this is the first one I've hit since I bought the game. And they're these missions that they give you usually like 72 hours in like real world time to complete. And if you start it, you basically, I think you can restart it until you've completed one of the objectives. But once you have completed an objective, you are stuck into this mission of assassinating like this sort of specific new target created specifically for the elusive target mission. And then also some of them have side objectives, like this one I had to assassinate this one dude and then find a safe and open the safe and steal this like antique like Fabergé egg thing. And so once I like assassinated the guy, you can't like save and restart the mission or anything, and if you get killed, you're dead and the mission is locked off and you cannot complete it. So it creates this really intense atmosphere of like commitment to it, where it's like, I need to get in here, I need to kill this dude, I need to find this egg, and I need to get out, and I cannot die at any point. And if you get caught and you just get into a gunfight in Hitman, you can die super easily. So I did manage to get through and complete the elusive target mission, but there was one super close call, and that was just like this really invigorating moment of where I like basically I shot the dude with my pistol and I just ran out like this sort of like blind alleyway, and there was a guard right in front of me whose route changed in a way I didn't expect, and so he saw me and I saw him. I was like, well, I got to get out of here, and just like sprinted. I was like, I know where there's a costume, that I know there's an outfit in the basement of this mansion. I just need to fucking get through these doors and I am clear. And I'm running across this like long like lawn where there's a helicopter there and a couple of armed guards who just start shooting at me. I'm just like sprinting as fast as I can to get to this mansion. Just like, if I just get through these fucking doors. And I took like 3 or 4 bullets right before I scraped through, shut the doors behind me, like went down to the basement, knocked a waiter out, and took his clothes and just like slinked back into the crowd and disappeared. Like it's the Hitman's and those elusive targets emphasize those kind of moments in Hitman, that the main missions don't necessarily pressure you that way, that like if you get caught you can just like reload a save or something if you're trying to do something specific. And those elusive target missions, like, nope, once I'm committed to this thing, I have to fucking do it. So yeah, that game's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like they've gone very above and beyond for this thing.
Yeah, and it's just as more and more as time goes on, I feel like they're learning more of like how to change these elusive targets and different objectives and stuff and challenges you can put into the map to make them more interesting. And it is where this episodic business model for this game, I was thinking about this the other day, this is, I think, the first time I can think of, for me personally, that an episodic like business model has worked for a video game. Like, I don't think it works well for Telltale because their like episodes come out months apart and it's story based, and that's like that doesn't really work because you forget most of what the story stuff is before you get to the next episode. Like, obviously, like the Half-Life 2 episode 1 stuff, like that didn't pan out very well. Like, lots of games have tried this sort of episodic style, and most just like it. Either it's just fine, but you wish it just like all came out at once, or is actively detracting from the experience. And this like actually makes the game a lot better because it gives you this sense of being a part of this community, and like stuff like those timed elusive target events that you feel like when you go online and you see other people tweeting about, oh, this is how I killed this dude. There's this fun sense of community that you can get engaged with there. And then it also gives you the sense of being able to spend time in the game and not be pressured to move on to the next thing the way you would if all the levels were just unlocked from the front. So yeah, this game's great.
Nice. And I imagine that, whether you play it now while it's coming out episodically or wait for it all to be finished, however you play it, the game has to be materially better for the extra time they've had to sink into every one of those maps.
Because you can tell that they're learning as they go along. Like, you can tell when they figure out, like in the Sapienza map, like what kind of challenges didn't really work in the Paris map. And so, like, they have better challenges as they go along and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think, and I'm really excited to see what the next, the latter 3 maps are going to be like when they've had, like, that whole, because they kind of took a chunk of time off and did these bonus maps that are sort of like recycling a lot of assets, so clearly they didn't take as much time, and it feels like they've really been working on the next 3 maps and taking what they've learned and applying them to those. So
nice,
cool game. Awesome. It's a very, very, very good year for video games.
It's too good, and we're going to talk about that. And I'm going to try to carve out some time at some point for Hitman. Yeah. Once I'm done with my Final Fantasy X binge.
But, yeah. I mean, Final Fantasy X and X-2. Like, you have to see how the story ends. It's important. It makes, once you get there, it makes total thematic story sense why all of a sudden these three characters, or two characters and this one new character, are pop stars. It's Yuna becoming a pop star. It's the culmination of her character arc. It couldn't end any other way.
Did not know that about Final Fantasy X-2. I know the only
dress spheres.
Yeah, that's the only thing I know about Final Fantasy X-2 is the dress spheres.
Yeah, just wait till the fucking opening cutscene. It's amazing.
Okay. Well, anyway, and I should say, like with Final Fantasy X, I'm playing this on the side. I'm once we get into more big stuff, like if I have to put it aside for a little bit, I will, because I am committed to playing stuff for the purposes of podcasting and whatnot.
I will not let this become the Persona, Doctor Who, Digimon Story, Cyber Sleuth, and Final Fantasy X podcast. That's not happening on my watch.
That's okay. But yes, let's go ahead and move on to some news items. First off, a sad news item.
Okay.
Let's start with Kenny Baker, the actor who was inside R2-D2, who was R2-D2, who brought the little guy to life. He passed away this weekend at the age of 83. We'd known he'd been sick for a while. He was sort of a consultant on Star Wars 7, but he was obviously not in the R2-D2 suit or anything. And obviously this is sad. Kenny Baker is R2-D2, one of the best Star Wars characters, just one of the best.
Absolutely. If it wasn't for R2-D2, we wouldn't have Star Wars. Him and C-3PO introduced us to that universe.
Absolutely.
It's a very clever, structural bit of storytelling.
Yep. And, I've always heard lots of cool stories of him on the set.
Yeah.
And everyone had nothing but nice things to say about him this weekend and also just in the documentaries and stuff when you watch them. So it's sad. It makes you, it's a reminder that, Star Wars is eternal, but the people behind it are not.
Yeah.
And sobering thing to think about.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kenny Baker obviously, did more than just R2-D2. But R2-D2, that's a legacy right there.
Yeah,
even if you don't
that's
see him.
Cultural icon.
Yes, absolutely.
Most people don't get to be cultural icons,
And I think it's an important thing about that character that it's not like an automaton or anything. There's someone.
It has R2-D2 has personality to him. He is a character,
absolutely,
even without being able to speak. You know?
And some of that is Ben Burt doing the sound effects, and some of that is having a real person inside there, getting to move around and react to things. And it absolutely made a difference.
Yeah,
even though Kenny Baker kind of suffered for his art, because I just love the stories of him in Tunisia in that baking hot metal tube, and they'd go off to lunch and forget to get Kenny out of the R2 shell and stuff like that.
Actors who have to work in big suits and stuff, they suffer for their art, and they are not appreciated because nobody ever sees them on screen.
Yes.
If you ever look into Godzilla movies and giant monster movies and stuff from Toho, I think every single movie, one of those movies has 500 stories about the guy in the Godzilla suit passing out in the middle of a scene, and everyone be like, "What's going on?" Oh no, he passed out again because the fucking suit is melting.
And you're right. I mean, it's one of the sad things about these people, though, is we often don't get to hear about them.
Yeah.
And it is nice that I think Kenny Baker. Everyone passes away. It's nice that when he passed away, everyone knew what he did and was able to articulate that, and it's not a forgotten part of the Star Wars legacy.
Yeah, and recognize and appreciate what he contributed.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's go ahead and move on to different stuff. Speaking of Star Wars, the second trailer for Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, came out this week. I think it aired during the Olympics or something, but I just watched it on YouTube, as sane people do.
Yes. Yeah.
And God fucking damn.
It is a very, very good trailer.
What was the last time a Hollywood blockbuster had trailers just this overall impressive?
Oh,
I really struggle to think of it, because there are movies with trailers I really liked, like Civil War and stuff like that felt confident. But there's something about these Rogue One trailers where it's the cinematography and the sense of tone and atmosphere and just how much you kind of get out of the characters in these little snippets.
Yeah.
And just realizing, fuck, they have loaded this cast.
Yeah.
This is a great Star Wars cast. And just that it's a Star Wars movie that looks like it's really giving us something new, even though it's going to a period of time we kind of think we know.
Yeah.
I think it's just an impressive magic trick. Just these two trailers we've seen, they're just almost like good little short films. I don't know. They're very good.
Yeah, and again, it continues their unbelievable use of the Imperial March theme from the original Star Wars movies. They've just, managed to find so much new ground in what is one of easily the most well-tread movie themes in like movie history.
Yes.
Like somehow both of the Rogue One trailers use them and use that theme, like kind of remixed it in different ways and use it in different ways. And every time, like I've watched the trailer a couple of times, it's like every time that song starts playing, it's like I almost don't even recognize it as Imperial March because it feels so fresh to me. But it's it's great. They're very good trailers.
They're very good. And just like the amount of iconography, I feel like just these two trailers have tread and kind of rewritten just in how you see the Star Destroyers and the Death Star and the AT-AT walkers and stuff. It really feels like Gareth Edwards and the team getting this chance to go play in the Star Wars universe, but not just delivering something we've already seen. Really trying to give us something, a new perspective on that, which I think is so valuable and interesting. Yeah. I mean, again, when this premise was sort of pitched that Rogue One was going to be the story of how they got the Death Star plans, I totally rolled my eyes. I thought
I did because I fucking played that video game. Like I already know. I did it. It was me. I did it. I stole them. I just waited and I shot a bunch of stormtroopers. I took them. They were on a desk.
So it's just so nice to see these trailers that are so obviously confident and passionate, and just like I'm so excited to see these different characters. Like Jyn Erso looks awesome.
Yeah.
I love that her sort of partner in crime is Diego Luna. Yeah. He's an awesome actor. You got Forrest fucking Whitaker in there, just being cool, and you've got Donnie Yen. Is that
Donnie
his name?
Yen? Yeah.
God, he has a great moment in this trailer.
Man. And I've been watching a bunch of kung fu movies, including some of Donnie Yen stuff, like the Hitman movies are what he's most famous for. Like, those movies are fucking great, and they're all on Netflix, so if you want to watch them, go watch Hitman 1, 2, and 3. They're all great. And it's just really exciting as someone who really likes his work to see Donnie Yen just, like, be there, and it seems like he's perfectly cast as, like, this blind, sort of dark side Force user guy training the stormtroopers or whatever he's doing, and he just fucking looks awesome in this movie.
It's cool. I mean, in A Force Awakens, they did have the two sort of lead actors from the Raid movies, which are these awesome Indonesian martial arts films. But I think for multiple reasons, their scene did not pan out. I think they were shooting at the time when Harrison Ford broke his leg, so whatever stunt they were going to do is not there. And so, but already Donnie Yen is getting more to do in these trailers. So it's clear he's a character, not just there for like. I guess he could be there for 1 minute. It doesn't feel like that.
Yeah, no, yeah, it definitely feels... Because he's in both of the trailers, so it feels like he's a big part of the movie.
And so you got... I mean, and then there's actors we haven't even seen yet. Like, Mads Mikkelsen is in this. Alan Tudyk is in this. It's cool, and so I'm so excited to see it come together. And yes, I think they did the deployment of the Darth Vader image at the end is pretty perfect.
Yeah, like, because I feel like they had already kind of confirmed that he was going to be in the movie, and if you think about the timeline, it makes sense that he would be in the movie in some way, and the fact that, like, Darth Vader is a character that is entirely in costume, so and James Earl Jones, if you've watched the Star Wars Rebels show, you know he can still play that fucking character. Luckily, Darth Vader is a character that you can keep bringing back even as the actor ages. You don't have to try to recast him or anything. So
exactly.
It feels like a nice, just like really effective thing that just has like worked out really well, that one of the greatest, most iconic characters in that universe, you can keep on putting him in some of these movies and it would work and make sense.
And I'm so excited to see him in this because while Darth Vader is the focal point of the Star Wars saga 1 through 6, we really only get this kind of one limited perspective on him, which is Luke's. And which is, as the beginning is kind of this boogeyman, but very quickly it becomes more intimate in that. I like the idea of these soldiers who are there to do something very different, possibly having to go up against Darth Vader.
Like, and that is, like, if you like the idea that you should watch the Star Wars Rebels show, because they do that there, and it is fucking amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I am very excited to see what they do with that character. I'm excited to see all these new characters, because they all seem awesome. Yeah. It's just... You know, like, if this movie is as good as these trailers indicate, and I really hope it is, I will be able to forgive Gareth Edwards for not making Godzilla 2. If this is the movie he's making instead, I should be fine with that.
This is not why he dropped Godzilla 2.
I know, but I'm just making a rhetorical argument. I know, Jonathan.
Apparently, the insider stuff is that he decided to drop Godzilla 2 because the Warner Brothers or whoever's making it is going in a really dumb expanded universe direction, and he's not
because they want to do like the King Kong versus Godzilla again.
Yeah, and which could be good. It sounds like Gareth Edwards wasn't interested in that direction, and I get it. We'll always have Godzilla 14, I guess.
Yes, and we will soon have Shin Gojira. So
absolutely, and that's exciting.
Yeah,
God, I've seen a GIF going around from Shin Gojira. I'm so excited for that movie.
That movie seems like it's really good. Like, all the reactions from Japan are ecstatic.
Yeah, so I've also loved seeing some of the advertising from Japan,
yeah.
where clearly, like, Japan as a nation is happy to have Godzilla back.
Yeah, it's like, because it's been 12 years. Like, this is one of the longest gaps in between Godzilla movies there's been from Toho. And it seems like this movie has been critically, amazingly well received, and has made a huge amount of money in the Japanese box office. So yeah, I'm excited.
Awesome. All right, so we got that. Last couple weeks were the Television Critics Association press tour in California, and lots of news came out of that. And I'm not going to go through most of it at all, but they did have a day where the CW brought out all their superhero shows, because they now have 4 nights a week superhero shows, and they have The Flash, Arrow, Supergirl, new to their network, and Legends of Tomorrow. Supergirl was on CBS last year. You all know of my love of Supergirl. Great show. And I said multiple times last year, because The Flash stars Grant Gustin, who is from Glee, and it has multiple cast members, including the guy who plays Joe West, I forget his name at the moment, who is a classically trained singer. And The Flash has had both Grant Gustin and Joe West sing on the show. Or I should say Barry Allen and Joe West sing, and they're awesome moments, because when you have an actor who can sing, you should let him sing once in a while. It's great. And Supergirl stars Melissa Benoist, also from Glee.
Okay.
And co-stars Jeremy Jordan, a Broadway actor who you would also have seen in the film adaptation of The Last 5 Years with Anna Kendrick. He's a great singer. I think there's other people on the cast who can sing. And I've been saying, this is a no-brainer. You have to do a Flash Supergirl musical episode. I think I've asked for that on this podcast.
That sounds familiar to me.
And they said at the press tour panel that they'll be in the spring. They are doing a Flash Supergirl crossover where everyone will sing. And that makes me inordinately happy.
Cool.
So, just want to say that.
All right.
Yeah. And, I kind of got behind on Flash Season 2, and I'm just now starting to catch up because the new season's going to start in October. And I don't love kind of the back half of Flash Season 2. There's some good stuff and some very not good stuff. But the fact that he's going to be singing next season, I can forgive those sins.
Okay.
Because, it'll be a fresh start. It's Season 3.
I mean, just here, think about the back half of Flash Season 2. Now think about Suicide Squad. Now think about the back half of Flash Season 2, and just think about that spectrum, right?
Yeah, because it's a show that, the back half of Flash Season 2 has narrative problems, but with characters I like, who are performed well, who are in a setting where the cinematography is coherent, and the music fits the story, and the editing is good, and things like that. Yeah. Flash Season 2 is just fine.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So anyway, it's kind of fun. Greg Berlanti, who kind of runs all these shows, and the CW are clearly just having a lot of fun with the possibilities of having all these shows on their network. My only worry is that I hope they don't lean too hard into the crossover stuff, because they're talking about doing a 4-way crossover, and that could be cool. It could also be an utter clusterfuck.
Right.
If you have to figure out how to set that up, especially because, as they've established it, Supergirl is on a different Earth from the other characters.
Okay.
So I feel like there's complications, but, they can do it.
If it's comic book stuff, there are always complications.
Absolutely. So, but, I think it's crazy. The CW has 10 hours of programming a week, and 4 of those are DC shows.
Superheroes are big.
They are, and it's nice that at least one part of the DC machine is churning out good stuff.
Yeah.
Because everything else is shit.
Yeah.
All right, Sony.
Yes.
They got the PlayStation 4 Neo coming out.
Yes.
We've known about it for a long time. They are finally unveiling it September 7th. Invitations have been sent out to the press. I suppose they could talk about something else, but that would be a giant cock tease.
And that's the Austin Walker, the new at Vice Gaming, and Patrick Klepek, both people who used to work at Giant Bomb, both people who are the two people who broke the big PS4 Neo stories kind of back to back, are now working together at Vice Gaming. They broke the story on this story.
This is great.
Which is just the most amazing thing when you go to Vice.com Gaming, which had some good stuff on it. If people are interested in critical video game writing, I recommend it. But to go to that website in the morning and then see that with the headline from Austin Walker and Patrick Klepek, it feels like Sony's just going to have them assassinated or something at some point, because they break every single PS4 Neo story.
It's been awesome.
Yeah.
And no, I just started checking out that Vice Gaming thing because Patrick Klepek left Kotaku for this, and I really like him, so kind of followed him there. So that's cool.
It's good stuff.
Yeah, it's nice to have just good gaming journalists kind of concentrated in one place.
Yeah, and it's nice that they don't put out 500 articles every single day. It's a lot more focused than that.
Yes. So All right, but that Sony event's coming. That's September 7th. I think this is interesting contextually because, we'll finally get to know what this thing is.
Yeah, like what their sort of release strategy is, like how they're positioning it, and whether or not they've changed it from what the leaked stuff was earlier in the year.
Because some of the reports are indicating they've beefed it up a little to match the Morpheus thing.
Or the Scorpio thing.
What am I saying? Yeah, Morpheus was the PS4.
Morpheus is their own thing, yeah.
It's hard. Scorpio, yes. So that
it's hard to keep all the code names in mind.
This report, the original reports from people like Austin Walker and Patrick Klepek, if I'm not mistaken, were saying the Neo was going to come out this year, right?
They didn't have a specific release date or anything, but there was a lot of text about having to have Neo support ready by October and stuff like that. So yeah, it was definitely. If you read between the lines, it was indicating some sort of fall release this year, but was still left open.
Do you think that's still true, or maybe they felt like they don't have to do it in the fall?
I have absolutely no... I mean, they certainly don't have to do it in the fall, because Scorpio is, well off into the future. I have no idea what their plans are for this at all, because there hasn't been any... sort of in-depth reporting on, because I feel like all this, there's speculation about maybe the internals have changed in response to stuff like that, but none of that has been presented in a way by reporters as an actual story saying that. So yeah, I have no idea what to expect from this.
I'm curious, and we're also hearing that September is when we're going to hear about the NX. Yeah. So I just think September, again, in the larger context, could be interesting to hear what is Sony's next step, what is Nintendo's next step, kind of presaging we're going to get Microsoft's next step, which we know will have the highest quality pixels anywhere, but other than that, not much. I'm never going to stop making fun of them for that.
Yeah, that video is definitely something.
Yep. Highest quality pixels, that means something.
Yep, 4K gaming.
All right. Speaking of September stuff, although this is not September stuff anymore, Kotaku reported... Kotaku, I saw it on there. They did not report it.
I thought it was Kotaku, because it was Jason Schreier from Kotaku,
Jason Schreier, but he was... but I think there was another source, a European blog or something, that he was, following up on. Okay. So anyway, Kotaku broke it in the States, to say that. That Final Fantasy 15 has been delayed from September 30th to November 29th, 2-month delay. Not necessarily surprising, although... so many of their cards are in that basket.
Yeah, and it feels a bit close, a little bit closer than most delays are. Usually you hear a delay a full month or so of before. I guess it's about a month.
It's about a month and a half now. I mean, so I think the thing is probably you have to decide now because they're about to press discs.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's it is on the verge of when the game would have to go gold. So
right. So and if you read the story, I think it's very clear this is going to happen. This is not a rumor. This is a very well sourced report.
He has materials from some GameSpots that are oh, we have these all stands for Final Fantasy 15. Here's this sticker that you need to put over the release date that has the new release date on it. They didn't just make that shit up.
No. So as with all delays, I am sad that I did not get to play this game sooner rather than later, but I am happy that they will have the time needed to polish the game.
Yeah.
And with this one in particular, I am so happy it's out of that September window because I'm looking at my game calendar and this will allow me to play so many more games. On November 29th, it'll clash a little bit with Gravity Rush 2, but other than that, this is, I think, for my sanity, this is a better window for that game.
Yeah. And it is something where, it does sort of reassure me a little bit that they doing the delay because while I enjoyed a lot of the stuff about the Final Fantasy 15 Platinum demo that came out over the summer, the one thing about that was that the frame rate was pretty shit on PS4 at the very least. So, hopefully this means that they recognize, because I feel this game is obviously clearly very beautiful, but at the same time it has never run quite that well. So hopefully this is them just saying yes, we're going to take the time to really iron that out.
And Hajime Tabata, the director of the game, has been very clear about. He's been totally open about that optimization is the biggest challenge with this one. And I mean, if you look at those trailers, this is attempting something on a scale that I don't think we've ever seen in a console game.
Yeah.
With this kind of battle system and visuals. So I will be forgiving of certain levels of technical jankiness anyway.
Yeah.
But I think them taking an extra 2 months, which is a really long time in game development, and they've been, and I think Jason Schreier quoted an interview he did with Tabata where this was months ago, and Tabata was saying, it's done, we're just optimizing.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part. So that extra 2 months could make all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
So, hopefully a good thing for everyone involved.
Yes, but again, this is, because some of the reaction online to this delayed news has been, as it's often the case, so baffling of where this is happening. The game is being delayed. Like, it has not been officially stated by Square Enix yet, but if you read the Jason Schreier's article at Kotaku, it is happening. Like, that, like, there's no real room for doubt there. Like, he's not going to fucking just publish a story because, like, oh, so, like, my friend who has a friend that worked at GameStop said they're delaying Final Fantasy 15. That's not how this kind of story happens.
No, and I mean, he had multiple levels of sourcing in there, some anonymous, some less so. Either way, that's how journalism works.
Yeah.
And as you said before we started recording, it's hilarious that this is Jason Schreier having to go through this again, though, because he broke the No Man's Sky delay.
Yeah, which turned out to be true. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah. And again, delays, I mean, No Man's Sky is a game that clearly came in hot.
Oh, yeah.
Working up to, so thank God they delayed it, because that game would have, it's already got some problems right now. What if they had not delayed that game? It could have been a real disaster. So, yeah, delays are overall a good thing. And hey, this game has been in development for 10 fucking years.
Yeah, you can wait a couple of months, guys. It's okay.
And again, consider this. Comes out in November. You'll have December to play it. That's an easier time to play a giant.
It clears out, like, the back of it,
Yes.
Because, like, playing an RPG is a lot like firing a bazooka. Like, there's just, like, a lot of, like, shit behind you that just gets destroyed.
Yes.
So, like, having, like, a huge amount of time after the Final Fantasy 15 launch, like, that's a good thing, because it, like you said, like, it clears our way for, like, our schedule to be able to play releases that don't take, like, 500 hours to complete.
For instance, I mean, XCOM 2 got pushed to September 27th.
Yeah.
And if that was coming out the same week as Final Fantasy 15, there was just no way I was going to get to that. Now I totally could.
Yeah, exactly.
It could be fun. Gears of War 4, if it's good, it's something I would, if I hear good things about it, it's something I would like to try. It was coming out like a week after Final Fantasy. No way I was going to be able to do that. So
because, those games take so long, they just clear out, like, weeks to months after they come out, where you can't play much else.
Yeah, and I was watching some trailers for this today, and I was watching some of that anime, The Brotherhood, Final Fantasy 15. I'm so excited for this game. This game looks cool. Anyway, so there's that. Other news. Let's see. The Hollywood Reporter, I believe, broke the news that Warner Brothers is in active development on a sequel to Man of Steel.
They sure missed the boat on that one, didn't they?
This is weird. Like, when are they going to slot it in there? Like, because don't they have like 30 movies they're making in this stupid DC universe?
Yeah, I mean, did they say that they changed Justice League to just only being one movie, or is that Marvel with Avengers?
I feel like it's Justice League, because we didn't cover this last week, but Marvel did. All they did was drop the Part 1 from Infinity War. They still have that second date saved, and to my knowledge, they are still making 2 Avengers movies, because Joe and Anthony Russo have actually been very clear about this. It's not a Part 1, Part 2 thing. The 2 movies are very closely linked, but they don't want it to feel like...
It's not like Deathly Hallows Part 1
or the Hobbit movies or something. It's not like that. So people were reporting that as like they're not making the second one. Okay. That is not the story. They have said for months they're changing the title of the second movie and dropping Part 1 and 2. So, but with Justice League, no. They were going to do a Part 1, Part 2. They have a second Justice League movie sort of penciled in on the schedule, but they've said they're focusing on this. Okay. They've redone the story, so it's one movie.
So maybe that was where when they decided we're not necessarily coming quite so hot on the Justice League stuff. Maybe that makes some room for let's go back to fucking the drawing board and let's try to do this the right way and make a couple of sequels to the first one that we did for our cinematic universe before we do the crossover movie.
Can you think of another scenario where a studio or a TV series or whatever announces a sequel to something where in the canon of that story, at the moment, the character is dead?
I just realized that right before you said that. I just realized, wait a minute, Superman's fucking dead in these movies. Obviously he's coming back in Justice League. Everyone knows that. But you're right, it does feel weird that, at least pretend you're trying to leave it as a surprise, guys. At least make the tiniest bit of effort. Don't just already announce the sequel. Oh, then maybe Man of Steel 2 is just a prequel to Batman v Superman. We don't know. Maybe it shows the story about how Superman became a total fucking douchewad between Man of Steel 1. I mean, he kind of was in Man of Steel, but, he's even more so in Batman.
I thought you were going to say it's the origin story of him as the fisherman from the beginning of Man of Steel.
Yeah, it's well before he even, gets the Superman costume. It's him going around, all bearded and sexy, on a Norwegian fishing boat, just hanging out with his buddies. He doesn't even really use his powers in the movie.
Yeah, no, I mean... It's part of just DC's baffling model, and hey, I'm not holding any punches anymore. Fuck those guys and their stupid, shitty piece of crap movies. I had to watch Suicide Squad. I don't have any fucks left to give about this.
Yeah, like it's so.
I mean, I'm not seeing any more of these. I was very clear about that in my review. I'm done. I'm not seeing Justice League. I'm probably not going to see Wonder Woman. Fuck all these movies. I morally object to them at this point because they're shitty. But
I'll probably check out Wonder Woman at least.
We'll
not
see.
Fucking saying anything about Justice League.
We'll see. Batman sexually assaults Harley Quinn in Suicide Squad. Don't be so sure about their female superhero movie. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it might be intellectually interesting at the very least. Who knows to see how they handle it.
Maybe.
Yeah,
I'll see that one if it gets good reviews. But other than that, nope.
Man of Steel 2.
Man of Steel 2. I guess this is just a segue into our Suicide Squad discussion. It's just... It's so confusing, especially because apparently they are in active development on a Batman movie and a Superman movie, but they've got Justice League already coming out, and then The Flash and Aquaman and all this stuff, and they've got all these dates, like their Cyborg movie, which is in 2020.
They're never fucking making a Cyborg movie. I don't know why DC is trying to make Cyborg a thing. They have been since the New 52. Nobody gives a shit about Cyborg outside of the context of the Teen Titans. Like, that character is never going to be a big thing. Stop it.
Anyway, so I just wanted to announce that and make fun of it. I mean... Do you think Zack Snyder directs this? Or is he...
I don't know.
What do they do?
If Warner Brothers knew what they were doing, they would kick Zack Snyder to the fucking curb.
Dude, here's the larger discussion. Is there any way to salvage these characters?
No, you have to, retcon it or, do something. It's so... Man of Steel 1 was a movie I really didn't like for, I think it has problems as a movie. I think it has a lot more problems as a Superman movie. But, as I said, and we talked about when we reviewed that movie and have talked about since, that movie had more than enough potential to have a good sequel to it. I wanted a good sequel to it because I want a good Superman movie. But then they made Batman v Superman, and they fucking fucked it up even harder because Superman's even worse in that. He's an even worse version of Superman. I don't know how you can pull that back after making two really bad Superman movies with really bad versions of the characters. You can't, in the third appearance of the character, try to, turn that around all of a sudden. Oh, right, because he's dead. He can't be in Justice League, Jonathan. What are you talking about?
But, I mean, this is the question. Let's say if just hypothetically, Justice League is as bad as Batman v Superman and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Who's going to go see the solo Superman movie? Man of Steel didn't even do that well at the box office. Yeah. So... I mean, it did fine, but they wanted it to gross $1 billion, and it did $660 million, which I would love to have $660 million, but I don't run a multi-billion-dollar studio. I react to shareholders, so it's all confusing. Anyway, let's move on and talk about Suicide.
Maybe Christopher Nolan makes Man of Steel too. Maybe they find some way they court him. They just give him all the money in the world and 100% creative control, and he just gets to make Man of Steel 2. Calls it The Dark Knight 3.
It'd be better.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to start talking about Suicide Squad.
Okay, go ahead.
We're going to talk about the movie. Spoilers, Diablo dies at the end.
I didn't even know Diablo was in this game. Who gets the Bloodstone to become Diablo in this movie? I don't know.
He's a gangbanger, and it's super racist.
Oh, okay.
Anyway.
The comic character Diablo, not the video game. Okay.
No. That would be great. I love the video game.
It's just a whole movie about Will Smith going around killing monsters and just getting better axes in armor, and then eventually he kills Diablo.
Suicide Squad is awful.
Okay,
we're gonna talk about it.
Yeah,
honestly, I want to start with a quote from my review.
Okay,
because I don't know how to more eloquently say this than I was able to in writing. But I think it's just I want to contextualize this because I think people are. I'm angry at the tepid reactions to Suicide Squad.
Okay.
I'm angry that there are people who are saying this is good enough for them. I'm angry that there are people who can look at this movie and say, that's okay, that was worth my money, this is okay for superhero films now. And it's not that I resent other people's enjoyment. I try never to get to this point. Even with Batman v Superman, I don't think I was at this point with the people who liked it because it's... I don't know. It's hard to explain. But... with Suicide Squad, there's something about this movie that rubs me so far the wrong way that when people kind of give it a pass and say, it's okay, it wasn't as bad as Batman v Superman or something like that, it really, I don't know, it irks me, and I think this is part of it. So this is the end of my review. You can read it on jonathanlatt.com, and I said, it wasn't that long ago that WB superhero films aspired to something greater. that WB could hire a genuine artist like Christopher Nolan with actual artistic and thematic interests in a character like Batman to make their comic book movies. It was only 8 years ago that The Dark Knight erupted as one of the best films of the decade, winning what remains the only acting Oscar for a performer in a comic book movie. It was only 4 years ago that The Dark Knight Rises could seem like a relative creative disappointment, even as its ambition and craftsmanship demanded real attention and discussion. How far WB and DC have fallen. Now Batman murders people and sexually assaults beloved fan characters. Now darkness and nihilism pervades everything, with abusive relationships seen as aspirational, and oodles of gunfire viewed as the height of cinematic thrills. Craftsmanship and vision have given way to awful made-by-committee editing, real ideas having soured into false character arcs and meaningless CGI garbage. When Chris Nolan brought Batman back from the dead in 2005 after the dark days of Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, we thought the Caped Crusader's worst days were far behind him. How naive we were.
The worst days are always ahead of us, Jonathan.
And this is my point. I think when people say this is good enough, it frustrates me for a couple reasons. In part, that 8 years ago, Sean, The Dark Knight is not that old.
No, yeah.
And I'm not saying every Batman movie needs to be The Dark Knight, but I am saying that if that was a high watermark, and this is what we're getting now, in 8 years you can go from that to this. In 4 years you can go from The Dark Knight Rises, which I recognize is a messy movie, has problems.
But it's fine. It's an okay movie.
It's a good, at lowest, it's like a B-.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a movie that if you like Batman, you should watch Dark Knight Rises.
And it's beautifully made.
Yeah.
It's wonderfully acted. It is stunning to look at. All of these things that I think doesn't forgive some of the problems in the script, but even those problems in the script, they're like narrative problems. They're not, oh my god, what are they doing to the female character problems.
Yeah.
They're not things like that. It's not, oh my god, you got an actor like Will Smith and you gave him that to play. This is what I'm talking about. And this is why I think when you put it in that context, I don't get how we can be okay with the kind of stuff that Warner Brothers is churning out now, because they, less than a decade ago, created what remains for many people the high watermark of this entire genre.
Yeah.
I don't even know what the comparison point to that is. You know, it'd be like if Marvel followed Captain America Civil War with whatever their Batman Forever is.
Yeah, with the Captain America Civil War with the comic book version of Civil War.
Yes, sure, something like that. And then yes, on the Marvel side, I get that Marvel can be formulaic and that cinematically they're not that interesting in terms of what they do with sort of the medium and sort of the visuals and stuff.
Yeah.
I get all of that. They are good movies. They're decent movies.
Yeah.
They reward. They want to have fun. They are made with passion. They don't disrespect the audience.
They don't disrespect the source material.
Yes, those basic things. And I just think contextually, there's all of this, and then you get fucking Suicide Squad. And oh my god, I don't even know where to begin with this movie. Everything about this movie is fucked. It's just fucked. Like, you can go read the reports about how this movie was completely reshaped in the editing room and all that stuff, which on its own, by the way, is not a bad thing. That happens to movies sometimes and it can be fine.
Yeah.
It's when it's done poorly. And I could have heard nothing about Suicide Squad. I could have seen none of the trailers, read none of the reports, been just totally offline for a year, and I could have watched this movie, and within 5 minutes I would have said, what the fuck happened to this movie in the editing room? Because like the first two scenes are just these non sequiturs with Deadshot and Harley Quinn in prison, even though the following scene, which feels like it's the actual opening, which is Viola Davis as Amanda Waller sort of pitching her idea for the Suicide Squad, clearly sets up like that she's going and getting these villains and putting them in her prison. And so the first two scenes are made to look like they're being taken out of their prison and put in her prison, but they're not. It's the set of the prison that they are ultimately in.
Okay,
so it's just things like that, like right off the bat. And I think in the first 3 minutes, they've used like 3 different annoying, shitty pop songs to get us into this. The movie has zero momentum whatsoever, because every scene is just this garbled, utterly poorly edited thing where they're just cutting around performances and clearly eliminating lines and moments to kind of make a different feel for it, and they're just cutting super fast, and it's really, really bad editing and shooting because it's just however they originally shot it is incoherent because that's not what it's been turned into, and then it's scored with just this relentless litany of some pop songs that are fine, some that are awful, but none of which belong in this fucking movie. I mean, just to give you an example of how, like, over the top and just on the nose the pop songs in this are, is I saw a trailer before Suicide Squad for, I forget what the movie was, but it used AC/DC's Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap.
Okay,
and I kind of rolled my eyes because I'm like, that is one of the most overused rock songs for this kind of thing.
Right, yeah.
Like, I like that song. We have to put it on a moratorium. It's been used too much.
Yeah.
It's like Freebird or something.
Yeah, then it's like, as soon as it's used in the context of like a movie trailer or something, it's like you have this weird like Pavlovian response of like, this movie's probably shit because I've seen enough trailers for shit movies that have this song in it. This movie's shit.
Yes. And so I had that, and then not 15 minutes into Suicide Squad, what song am I hearing? Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap.
Okay,
Just again, the same part of the song, the same cue, and it's over Killer Croc's introduction.
Okay.
Because that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Killer Croc. No, it's not. Who is Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap? It might be Deadshot. No, because Killer Croc is even worse. Killer Croc is Fortunate Son by Creedence.
What? Is this a Vietnam movie? Like,
I don't know. It makes no sense. And like the scene is just like him down in his like sewer dungeon, and the cops like beating him up because he's black. I'm just kidding. It's because he's an alligator or a croc. I guess it's in his title. He's a croc.
He's a crocodile.
Yeah,
racist. No. Crocodiles and alligators are kind of not the same thing.
I know.
Jesus
anyway,
Christ.
So I like that's the kind of movie this is that you're getting Creedence and stuff. And it was like. I don't even know how to describe it. I was physically uncomfortable watching this movie by like the 10-minute mark because it is so annoying. It's just nothing but like choppy editing, super fast pace where every scene just kind of races by and you don't really get what the point of the scene was.
Right.
And it's just scored with either just an endless assault of pop songs or a really bad musical score that's like way over the top by a composer I like. It's Stephen Price, who not 2 years ago won the Oscar for Gravity, which is a great musical score.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, yeah,
so
definitely.
This dude can score movies. That same year, I think he did Edgar Wright's The World's End, another good musical score that actually mixed very well with a pop-heavy soundtrack. So it can be done. I know this guy is not untalented. It's a terrible musical score, terrible use of music, and it is so clearly just trying to be Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
And there's so many reasons it fails at that, and why it's clearly trying to ape that, like down to like minute to minute, it's trying to hit the same plot beats of Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, I bet if you got a stopwatch out, because they're both about 2-hour movies, it's the same moment in Suicide Squad where the team is like sad and like, we're going to decide to be heroes now. Except in Guardians, that scene plays pretty well because you like Peter Quill.
Because it took the time to establish the characters and make you affectionate of them.
Yes. Yeah. And in Suicide Squad, I don't think Killer Croc has had a line yet.
Okay.
And he's one of the 5 people in that room. It would be like if Rocket Raccoon was just in the background looking weird but never talked. That's Killer Croc in this movie.
Like, they keep on, like, talking about stuff, and they would cut to Rocket Raccoon, and he's about to open his mouth, and it cuts back to Peter.
They basically do that in Suicide Squad with Killer Croc. It's crazy. But, Guardians of the Galaxy, why the pop music works so well, it's a couple reasons. One, it's all got a common source. They're 80s songs with and it's not just 80s, it's a certain genre of 80s music, right?
Right, yeah.
And thematically, these are songs that Peter Quill has on the mixtape his mother left him, so there's a character reason whenever one of those songs kicks in.
Yeah, and a lot of them are diegetic in the movie. Like they're supposed to be actually playing within the context of the film's universe.
Yes. But in Suicide Squad, they're from all over the place. They're all artists, all genres, all time periods. And so that alone is like, that just doesn't work. You can't do that. It's just annoying when you do something like that.
And it's not like evoking some sort of period of it.
No.
Like, I mean, obviously Guardians of the Galaxy is technically set in our time, but as you said, like the reason why it has this sort of like 80s pop thing is because that's the music from Peter's childhood that he has lost because he was taken away.
Yes. So it's actually a very poignant thing when they use something like Moon Age Daydream or whatever, and it's something that he had. I mean, and this is down to the aping of Guardians. You literally use Spirit in the Sky, which was used in Guardians.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you can't reuse songs, but when you're already aping a movie, maybe just say its soundtrack is off limits.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. So it just, all of that just pisses me off. The music is so bad. And it's just stuff like, there are scenes that I think could work that are just suffocated by the music. Like there's this scene where Deadshot, they want to kind of test his skills. Like Rick Flag, the guy who kind of leads the squad, wants to see how good Deadshot actually is.
Right.
And so they kind of have this shooting contest. And I think that could work. It's not a great scene or anything as written, but Will Smith is awesome, and he's kind of being cool. But instead, once he picks up the gun, they jump into, it's some Kanye West song. It's a song I really like. I like Kanye West. It just doesn't fit. And it just feels like, okay, we got Will Smith and he's being cool, so let's play some random. It's a Black Skinhead is the Kanye song, which is the most overused Kanye song of the last few years because that's the one you hear in all the movie trailers. It was in Wolf of Wall Street, a bunch of other stuff. So it's a song that like everyone has heard. You're not even going for the deep Kanye West cut. You're going for the one everyone knows. So it's like it's pandering, it's stupid, it's on the nose, and it just suffocates these scenes. And just for the life of me, I couldn't get into the movie because every 5 minutes, right as maybe they're starting to develop a rhythm for the film, they have to stop, recut everything, and then throw in some shitty pop song.
Great.
So that alone, 20 minutes into this thing, Sean, I was wishing I was watching Batman v Superman. I was like nostalgic for that movie. Because say what you will about Batman v Superman,
and I will,
when it edits from like one character to another in a two-shot and like in a back and forth, I know who's on screen and talking.
Right, yeah.
I know who Lex Luthor is and roughly what his position in the film is.
Sure.
Maybe I don't understand his motivations, but I get...
You get that is Lex Luthor, technically, and he is the villain of the movie.
Yes. So, like, the very lowest basics are met, right? The movie looks good. You cannot say Batman v Superman has bad cinematography or does not kind of hold your attention visually. It is incoherent on a narrative level, I think, in a lot of ways. I don't think it is visually incoherent. I don't think it is editorially incoherent, except for the lack of establishment shots, which we've talked about. But, whatever. So there's things like that. Like, at least when Zack Snyder jumps into an action scene, even if he's at his worst, like he is at the end of that movie, which is not a great action scene at all.
No, it's
just CGI barf. It is so much better than anything in Suicide Squad because it at least has some kind of recognizable visual language to it. And so...
I would argue that the infight of Batman v Superman is stretching the limits of that.
You haven't seen Suicide Squad.
That's true. It's true.
This is comparative. Look, I would never have praised Batman v Superman at all until I saw something worse.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't think you could go beyond the bottom of that barrel.
That's a deep barrel. That
barrel.
bottom is really far down.
It's really far down. And so I'm just talking about like the way the movie is made. I mean, the action in this, it is all... Like, the second act, they get to... I'm going to back up.
Okay.
Remind me to talk about the action later.
Okay.
I want to explain the story in Suicide Squad.
You can try, sure.
I'm going to try. Because here's something people are saying is good about the movie. They're saying Amanda Waller is cool. Amanda Waller's cool. All right.
Okay.
I can buy that. I like
having read comic books, Amanda Waller is cool.
Absolutely. She is inherently cool. Viola Davis is inherently cool. That should be a slam dunk, right?
Yes, that's really great casting.
Yeah, and I'm not going to say Viola Davis is bad in this or anything. I think she looks, to me, a little bored. And I would be too, Viola. I would.
Yeah.
But even a little bored Viola Davis is better than like 99% of actors. So she's good. You could not really ask for a better Amanda Waller on screen.
Right.
Right? So that's good. However, I cannot buy into the Amanda Waller is cool thing because of the plot of Suicide Squad. So let me explain it. The first act, you have those two non-sequitur opening scenes, and then Viola Davis is like, she explains, I want to get a bunch of bad people together, they can do some good, all that.
That makes sense. Not really, but...
And the ostensible reason for this is not because there's some threat out there that she needs the Suicide Squad for, which is why you think she would do it.
Yeah.
It's because Superman died, and they don't have anyone to protect them.
Okay.
And apparently, even though in this world they've set up Batman is going after... And in one scene, you see the Flash capture, I think, Captain Boomerang. So the heroes are out there.
Yeah.
You probably don't need a Suicide Squad. I mean, but whatever.
Maybe they're simply the Suicide Squad to protect everyone from Batman. Like, maybe that's what their ultimate goal is.
That would be a better plot. But anyway, so at first she's just like, we should assemble them, but she has no reason. It's like, and literally someone asks her like, well, why? What are we going to use them for? And it's like, well, if we need them, we'll have them. And that's such a bad motivation for the first act of a movie. Yeah. So you spend the entire, very long first act of this film, which is basically just jumping around and doing different origin stories without actually having any reason for them to get together. Yeah. Jumping back to a Marvel example, if you look at like the Avengers or something, imagine if the Avengers for 45 minutes, none of the characters talk to each other. Like, you just had, here's an Iron Man scene, here's a Thor scene, here's a Cap scene, and none of them got together. When, in the Avengers, they're all getting together very fast because the motivation is, aw shit, Loki's got the fucking sphere and stuff, and he's on Earth, and we've got to figure this out. And so it gives them a motivation to come together and quickly start building the team dynamics, which are the important part of a team-up movie.
Yeah. Yeah, right? Like it has, each character kind of has I think Thor doesn't quite, but most of the characters have a short scene at the very beginning of the movie that just is mostly there to remind you, oh, right, that's Iron Man. Oh, right, that's Captain America. And then, like you said, like it very quickly gets you into Captain America and Iron Man teaming up in like Paris or wherever they are, where Loki starts like doing his bad shit.
Absolutely. So that's very fast. And in this, it's like for 30 minutes or however, I didn't have this movie felt so long, so I could be totally wrong. But like, it's scene after scene of like flashbacks and origin stories and bad pop songs. And at no point are the characters actually coming together and getting to know each other. And even when they do, they're in prison, and it's really Rick Flag yelling at them, and they're not getting to interact.
Okay, so I'm going to stop here and ask some questions. Okay. How many people are there in the Suicide Squad, and who are they?
Interesting question, because there's kind of two answers.
Okay.
So you got Amanda Waller, who's like, she's not part of the squad.
She's the overhead.
She's the overhead.
She's manager.
I'm saying she's overhead. Then you got Colonel Rick Flag, who's Joel Kinnaman, and he's the guy who like leads the squad to make sure they don't do dumb shit.
Okay, yeah.
Right? But then the actual squad, there's 5 people. There's Deadshot.
Okay.
There's Harley Quinn.
Yes.
There's Captain Boomerang.
Okay, yeah, they put him in the movie.
There's El Diablo.
Okay. What's his power?
Fire.
Like, is it more specific, or is
fire?
No,
he can shoot fire.
Okay.
Stuff, yeah. And then there's Killer Croc.
Okay.
So it's those 5. And throughout this first act, those are the 5 you get to know. Like, it does the origin stories, you see them. Yeah. And then, I'm not kidding, this is what the movie does. When they get to the city where they have to do the operation later in the movie, a 6th member is there that you have never seen before in any... Maybe if you scour a shot, he's in the background somewhere because they clearly edited him out or added him in later. And it's Slipknot. And he's suddenly there. And they're all like, hey, Slipknot, it's cool to be on the team with you. And I'm like, who the hell is this? He wasn't in the first act of the movie. It's insane. And what he's there for is he tries to run away, and so Colonel Rick Flag kills him. And so he's the sacrificial guy.
But what, they didn't even bother to like introduce their red shirt at the beginning of the movie. They only introduce him in literally the scene where they kill him.
Yes, I'm not exaggerating.
Christ. Man, that is some like either you had to fucking edit out all of his scenes earlier, or you decided on that plot mechanic way late into shooting this fucking movie.
Like they're in the helicopter and they're all talking, and then suddenly it just cuts. And he's just there in a shot, and they're like, hey, Slipknot, what's your power? And it's like, you can't do that.
Yeah, like, it's fine to have a character that, like, who exists to show that this Rick Flag guy is willing to kill them if they try to go AWOL. But you have to set him up at least a little bit. He has to, like, at least be in the, like, forming the team stuff in the background and have a couple of lines.
Because if you asked me, like, okay, clearly they set up they do the Escape from New York thing where they put an explosive charge in their neck.
Right.
And it's clearly like, okay, they're going to kill one of them because that's screenwriting 101.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a bad thing, I'm just saying it's a very basic thing. And I was sure it's got to be Captain Boomerang, right? This guy's not even a character.
Shit about fucking Captain Boomerang.
And he's barely in it, whatever. And no, they introduce a new red shirt to... It's so stupid. Anyway, but so for that whole first act, before they go to the city, they're being assembled, but with no reason to be assembled. And the other member of the Suicide Squad, who I didn't mention yet, is Enchantress. So this is Dr. June Moon, she was like an archaeologist, and she uncovered the tomb of a 9,000-year-old witch. And,
yes, you do.
And yes, it is just as silly as it sounds for the series that started with Man of Steel and Batman v Superman and tried to be fairly grounded.
Yeah, or the other people in this movie is like a guy who can shoot well, a guy who can throw boomerangs very well, which is admittedly very silly, but isn't in any way supernatural. Yeah. A woman whose only superpower is that she's kind of crazy. Like, I don't really see we'll get back to Harley Quinn, I'm sure.
We'll get back to Harley Quinn.
A guy who can shoot fire, it's like, that's at least a little supernatural, but like, on the scale of like 9,000-year-old entombed sorceress, and I can shoot some fire from my hands, it's pretty mild. And then a guy who has a bad skin condition.
Yes.
None of those things are like, if you're trying to assemble a team of comic book characters that could theoretically fit into a pseudo-realistic world, you would put those characters in there. You would not then also put in the 9,000-year-old entombed sorceress that possesses the woman who discovers her.
Or if you do it, you have to have some level of self-awareness.
Right.
And instead, they have poor Viola Davis just doing this exposition and, like, having no awareness that this is weird. Like, someone says, a witch? And she's like, yes, a witch. And, like, they don't even play it as a laugh line or anything. Like, imagine if Guardians of the Galaxy did not make it clear that Rocket Raccoon is a raccoon.
Right, yeah.
It's just like, oh, it's a raccoon. No, they actually make it a plot point, and it becomes poignant, but they also recognize it's silly, because only by allowing the audience to laugh can campy things like that ultimately be transformed into poignant things.
Yeah. Or like Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy is the same way.
Yeah. It's oh God, it's so shitty. Anyway, I'm getting off track. But so June Moon, she's got Enchantress in her, and Viola Davis has in a briefcase Enchantress's heart, which she punches sometimes to make Enchantress keep in line. I'm not kidding. That's what she does.
Okay,
and so
that's a great
mental image. But she's like, Enchantress is going to be on the team too. She's in June Moon. June Moon is Rick Flag's girlfriend.
That's a coincidence.
Well, apparently Amanda Waller manipulated it all. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to ask any more questions along those lines.
No, they do.
Except that at least the movie lampshades how bizarre the coincidence is.
Yes. So anyway, and everyone asks Amanda Waller, like, are you sure you can control the 9,000-year-old witch? And she's like, yeah, she'll be a boon to our team. So that's the first act, is you put all those people together.
Yes.
The threat in this movie is that Enchantress gets loose, resurrects her wizard brother, and they wreak havoc on this city. And then the Suicide Squad has to go into action to stop her. So, the only reason the Suicide Squad has to exist and do something is because it was formed in the first place.
Is the movie in any way aware of that fact in, like, thematizing, like, bureaucracy or something in government of, like, destroying itself and existing for its own reason?
Not at all. Like, there's a little bit at one point where they meet Amanda Waller and they're kind of mad at her, but I don't think anyone gets that she put Enchantress out there.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, okay, there is one scene where Deadshot, like, finds some... This is hilarious. He actually finds in the ruins of the helicopter a giant binder called Top Secret. And he pages through it, and he figures out that, oh, Enchantress was your girlfriend, Rick Flag. But even then, he's not kind of mad. He still decides, like, it's not thematized, is the basic answer. So, back to my original point, I don't think Amanda Waller looks very smart in this movie.
Yeah, no, when you assemble a team of people that are clearly, like, are bad people that have always just done bad shit, and then that goes wrong, no. You don't seem like a smart person.
Again, I made this comparison in my review. It'd be like if in the Avengers, Tony is building the Avengers for no reason, and he puts Loki on the team, and Thor's like, "Are you sure you want to have Loki on the team?" And Tony's
like, "Did you not watch my first movie? Like, he kind of did some bad stuff. I mean, he's my brother, but he's kind of an asshole."
Yeah, and Tony would be like, "Nah, it's okay. Loki's going to be in line. I've got his heart in a box or something." And
then the very next scene, Loki gets the fucking cube or whatever.
Yes.
It starts destroying New York.
Yep, and then the Avengers have to assemble to stop him.
Yeah.
Imagine how stupid that would be.
It would be pretty fucking stupid.
That's the movie America is paying a lot of money to see.
Yeah, well, you know, they paid a lot of money to see Batman v Superman.
Even the plot of Batman v Superman is not that dumb.
It's pretty fucking dumb.
I'm not done.
Right.
I'm not done. Because they get to the city, and the entire second act is they have to fight what turns out to be just, like, basically zombie alien things that have taken over the bodies of all the dead people in the city.
Can you be in any, like, because, you know, I'm a comic book guy. I like to get into the nitty-gritty. Can you be any more specific about the nature of the zombie aliens?
Okay,
what specifically they are?
They're like reanimated corpses, I think, that are, like, covered in, like, black. It almost looks like tar or something.
But did Enchantress reanimate them?
I think so.
Okay.
And so they have to kill these guys. And at first they're like, oh man, these guys keep regenerating. How do we get them down? And really what it just boils down to is they shoot them a lot. And so the entire second act of this
movie... That's how you kill zombies, you shoot them in the head.
The entire second act of this movie is just them shooting these just random nebulous blobs for like 30 minutes. And it's supposed to be cool. It's not. It's totally incoherent on a visual level.
I mean, the fact that you don't even really know how they were resurrected or why seems to indicate to me that there is really no motivation in the scenes.
It's like a bad video game because it's just like you have to get to the boss, but you have to have something to fight on your way to the boss.
Right.
That's all it is. And there's no real justification for it. It's just a lot of fighting. There's no character building going on because this is the other thing. Since you've done no work on the team before they go into action, when they go into action, there's not a lot of room to characterize them.
Yeah.
If you're Joss Whedon, you can do that well, but Joss Whedon also spends half of the Avengers before the action kicks in having them just be characters together.
Yeah.
So when the action kicks in, it can naturally extend those arcs. It doesn't have to start those arcs.
Yeah.
And so that's this whole part of the movie. It's just a bunch of gunfire and noise. It's just it's what every old person complains about Hollywood being.
Right.
Just a bunch of like gunfire and noise and sex because Harley Quinn is naked. basically,
right?
for the whole movie.
Yeah, hot pants.
Yeah. So there's that. But anyway, and then at some point they find out they were going to rescue Amanda Waller, who for some reason was stuck in the city. So they get her out, and then they get on the roof, and Amanda Waller just calls a helicopter anyway. So I don't know why she needed the Suicide Squad.
Yeah, no, like she should be more than capable on her own of being able to get out of there.
But then,
she's Amanda Waller.
But then the helicopter comes, and it's the Joker. And now I feel like I should probably talk about the Joker.
Yeah, I was wondering when he would come into the movie, because so far it didn't seem like there was any need for him.
I think this is his second scene in the movie or something.
Okay, is there like a flashback earlier or something?
Yeah, so okay, here's all of I'm going to try to explain all of Joker's scenes in the movie.
Okay.
Because if Jared Leto has more than 7 minutes of screen time, I would be stunned.
Right.
He's barely in this thing. So there's the scene in the trailers where you get a little flashback to basically the sort of the story from the Mad Love episode of Batman the Animated Series, where he's Harleen Quinzel's
Dr.
patient.
Harleen Quinzel.
Patient. Yeah. And then... but they do it like clearly they shot a lot more of these flashbacks and just chopped them up because like basically there's one line where he's like, I need you to get me a machine gun. And I swear he says it like that.
Right.
He's doing like a really bad Heath Ledger impression. But anyway, like Heath Ledger / Johnny Depp in Pirates, basically, is Jared Leto's Joker voice.
Yeah, now that you say that, like, I totally see that from the trailers.
Yes. And so she gets him a machine gun. Again, I'm explaining more than the movie does.
Right.
And so he breaks out, and then there's the scene where he's like, I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to hurt you really, really bad. And she's like, okay, Mr. J, I want to be tortured. And so he, like, electroshock therapies her. And I'm like, I don't know about this, guys. And anyway, so that's that scene. And then there's the scene where... And then, like, this is all part of one big flashback. Batman catches Harley, and Joker's in the car, and then he just disappears. Okay. And that's also where Batman sexually assaults Harley. We'll get to that.
Is that the only time Batman appears in the movie?
There's a mid-credit scene with Bruce Wayne.
Okay,
which I did not stick around with. I think... No, Batman is in one other scene. He catches Deadshot as well.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So he's in 2 scenes.
Does he, like, have lines or anything? Is it a meaningful presence? Did they actually get fucking... I lost the name off the top of my head.
I think it's Ben Affleck. Yeah, you can hear... He has lines in the Deadshot scene.
Okay, so it's not just a stuntman in a Batman scene.
Probably. It totally could be in the Harley Quinn scene.
Okay.
It is Ben Affleck in that, and I actually did not stick around for the credits, but I am sure it is actually Ben Affleck as Bruce Wayne. They didn't like just shoot him from behind and dump it in or something. But who knows?
Just piece it together from like cut lines from Batman v Superman.
So you have that scene with the Joker. Then there's a brief clip where someone comes to the Joker and explains how Harley Quinn is part of the Suicide Squad because Joker has people everywhere. And that's the scene where he's on the ground laughing with like his circle of knives and stuff.
Yeah, from the trailers.
And then there's another scene where he goes to get basically this scientist and he kidnaps him. And it's the person who made the bomb implants for the Suicide Squad.
Oh, okay.
And then there's the scene on the helicopter. And he rescues her. He disables her bomb, rescues her. Then the helicopter is shot down. And we never see him again. Until the last scene of the movie where he comes to rescue Harley from the prison. That's the extent of Jared Leto... hyped to fuck Jared Leto in this movie.
It's extensively in every single trailer. And every single trailer as much as any other character.
You've literally seen every scene from the trailers. Every one of the... Not like the full extent of those scenes, but every scene he is in this movie is in the trailers somewhere. Right. And there's actually a lot more that's not in the movie. And I don't know if I can say Jared Leto is bad. He's very bad in the scenes that we have, but clearly this is a weird performance that would rely on context and duration.
Right.
And it's just been cut to hell. Like there's this scene where he's in a nightclub with Harley, and he it's part of that larger flashback thing. And he's like talking to this guy, and he's like, hey, you wanna have sex with my girl? You want to have sex with my girl? And the guy's like, no, Joker, I would never have sex with your girl. And he's like, no, you're not. And then he like beats the guy to death. And that scene is like so chopped to hell. One, you can barely understand what he's saying, and two, I like the whole geographical like layout of the scene didn't make sense. So I don't know if I can even judge Jared Leto's performance because whatever performance he gave is fundamentally not in this movie.
Right.
And so maybe it would be a really interesting Joker. I don't know. It doesn't feel at all Jokerish to me. He doesn't make jokes. He's not funny. He's just a gangster with white face paint and a lot of tattoos. But he doesn't do anything at all Jokerish.
Okay.
So there's that. But, alright, so that's the second act of the movie. And then the third act, like, I forget what the transition is, but there's something like they've lost Harley, and then Amanda Waller gets kidnapped or something, and then they're like at their low point, and that's when they decide they want to be heroes and go save the world and go confront Enchantress. And then they do, and there's a bunch of CGI barf that makes the effects in Batman v Superman look like the best effects in any movie ever. And then Diablo kills himself to save someone, and then I think Harley throws like a bomb bag at Enchantress, and then Deadshot shoots it, and that saves the world, and that's the end of the movie.
Okay, I have another question, because you say that they have their like third act moment of like sort of despair and having to pull themselves up and decide we're going to be the good guys this time because we're a team of bad guys. At what point in the movie are they bad guys?
Never. I mean, never. There's the flashbacks,
Right.
I guess. You see Deadshot pull off one assassination, but for all we know, the guy could have had it coming. I don't know. Like, we don't see him doing anything that bad.
I mean, we've seen Batman kill more people than
yes,
that.
we absolutely have. Batman kills more people than any of the Suicide Squad in this movie.
Okay.
So like Deadshot is the main character of the movie. Like, he has the most screen time.
It's Will Smith.
It's Will Smith. I think that's in his contract, probably.
Yeah.
And so, but most of the Deadshot stuff, honestly, is him with his daughter. So it's him being humanized, not villainized.
Okay.
So at no point do we really feel like Deadshot is a bad guy. Harley Quinn is Harley Quinn, kind of, but so she's with the Joker, so we know she's the mob boss's like girl, but other than that, we don't really see her do anything bad. So there's that. Let's see, Captain Boomerang, we don't even get an origin story for.
I mean, there's not much to tell.
Killer Croc, we get nothing of. In fact, it looks like they were really mean. Like, Killer Croc is just like chilling in his sewer, and they come and arrest him. So I'm like, what the fuck did Killer Croc do?
I mean, they're racist against crocodiles. He just it's just a skin condition.
The only character who is actually, like, ironically, because he's not in the movie all that much, but the character who actually gets some backstory on this is El Diablo.
Okay.
Because we find out he was like a gangbanger, and he murdered his whole family accidentally when he got mad because, like, his wife didn't make his sandwich right.
Okay.
And so, which is like, when you learn that, it's in the, like, come to Jesus moment where they're all, like, we've been bad. And he, like, tells this story. And it's so much darker than anything in the movie. Like, it comes totally out of left field, totally.
Like, now in my head, like, I'm just imagining you've got, like, Deadshot's like, I mean, I used to politically assassinate some people. You have Harley's who's like, well, yeah, like, sometimes I did some bad stuff. Like, I armed robbery, You have Killer Croc's like, I was just hanging out. It's literally just a skin condition, guys. I'm not a crocodile. It is just a skin condition and I work out. That's all. And you have Diablo's like, I killed my whole family. And everyone, like, just looks at him and is like, whoa! Like, none of us are like, we're not upstanding citizens, but dude, why are you on this team?
It's so out of left field, and it does feel like this was clearly the core of whatever the dark version of this movie was that they made and then abandoned. But, like, it's such a weird scene because he also, like, in the flashbacks has all the tattoos and stuff still, so he looks silly, but he's got, like, the normal wife and kids. And and the wife's like, no, you've got to be a good guy and stuff. And then he's like, you didn't make my sandwich right or whatever, and he burns them all to death. Okay. And it's like, and he's like, at the beginning of the movie, he had promised, like, never to kill again. And so the whole thing is they're trying to get him to fight again. And then he finally admits what he did. And it's like, and again, it's like that, whoa, that's, because really in the present diegesis of the movie, the only villainous thing anyone does is that scene in the trailer where Harley robs a necklace or something from the store.
And she says, and we're the bad guys.
Yeah. So, no, they don't really do anything bad. But that come to Jesus scene, which is the scene in the trailers where they're all, like, pouring drinks.
Right, yeah.
Most of which, of what was in the trailer is not the final movie, which is weird. So the actual bonding moment isn't there. But yeah, so that's the thing, and that's the scene, and it is such a bafflingly bad scene because you get there and you realize the only two characters who have had prominent screen time are Deadshot and Harley.
Right.
El Diablo suddenly gets screen time in this moment, but he hasn't really been a factor yet. And if El Boomerang, Captain Boomerang, and Killer Croc have had more than like 10 lines combined, again, I would be shocked. Like your joke earlier where you were doing Killer Croc's voice, that is more dialogue than he has in the entire movie.
Okay.
And yeah, so they're trying to like legitimately be like, there's even a line, I think it's a little later in the movie, but it's like from this scene where El Diablo says, I've lost one family, I'm not going to lose another. And it's like, you guys aren't a family. You haven't interacted. Two of you haven't had lines. Yeah. One of you is a crocodile who I think is a good guy and just got arrested because he's a croc.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can't pull that shit.
Right.
You can't. And, like, at this point, also, like, Harley thinks the Joker is dead, and they don't really go into that. Like, she's sad for a little bit, and then she's not. And people are praising that scene because Margot Robbie is good. There's a scene where she's crying, and then she kind of jumps back into character, which would be interesting if you had a more interesting movie. Right. That's not what they do. And so it's just, God, it's bad. It's so bad.
Yeah. Man. So, now I have another question.
All right.
So going back to, like, this more gets back to the premise of the movie. So, like you said, this takes place post Batman v Superman, where Superman is dead. So the reasoning for assembling the Suicide Squad is we don't have Superman, we don't have anyone to protect us if bad shit goes down, which is already confusing considering how in this universe Superman has generally been treated as like a scourge, and people usually, Batman v Superman's all over the place, but it felt like people blamed him more or less for all the Zod shit. So that's a bit confusing. Let's just say, like, okay, yeah, Superman has been Earth's protectors against all the threats that he protected Earth from that we never saw in hypothetical other Superman movies. So we need people to replace that. So let's get a guy who can shoot really well, a guy who can throw boomerangs really well, a guy with the skin condition who works out, a guy who can shoot fire, and a woman who can swing a baseball bat. Like,
and Slipknot.
And Slipknot. Whatever his powers are. So, like, obviously, like, you're not tackling any Superman-level threats with this team of people. They are all teams of people that have, like, basically skills that can be replicated by the special forces. Like, we have people who can shoot really well. We don't need people who can throw boomerangs really well because I don't need to explain that shit. We don't need women who can swing baseball bats. You can get some guys who work out and you can paint them up if you want skin condition. And we have fucking flamethrowers. We don't need to break out all these fucking dangerous criminals and assassins and all these people to assemble this team that you can't control to the extent that you need to put bombs in their necks to keep them in line. Just get a team of people. None of them are so spectacular or extraordinary. One of them is literally, Harley Quinn is just a normal person. She's literally just a normal person. She's not a murderer like the Joker. She's not like insane, like psychopath, like a super planner the way that the Joker is like portrayed sometimes. She doesn't have those qualities. She's not this like super powered, super awesome, like close range combatant character. That's never what she's been. She's like a really great henchman that's a really interesting character. But she's not supposed to be like super formidable. So like, what does Harley Quinn do for the team next to the dude who never misses and the guy who can shoot fireballs?
She kills 2 of the slime dudes with her bat.
Right. Baseball bats, well known to be the most lethal and effective of all close-range weapons.
She gives the pep talk in the bar.
Okay.
And she does kind of pull a trick that helps them beat Enchantress, because she like gets this. I forgot about Katana, who is Rick Flag's bodyguard, who has the like soul sword. That has they do the thing where like everyone who's been killed by this sword, their soul is stuck in it, and like there's a scene where like Katana, who never has any lines, is just looking at her sword and crying because her dead husband's in the sword, and so that's a whole thing.
Okay.
But she uses Katana's sword to like cut Enchantress, and that allows them to throw the bomb bag in there. But so that's, I guess.
Why don't they just give Harley Quinn swords in the first place? Like, why did they not like stock her up with like something better than a fucking baseball bat?
You're asking. She does have a gun too. That she uses a little bit, but it doesn't really do anything.
But you see what I'm asking it just doesn't make and again, like on like a number of different levels, like just the team composition and what they're asked to do and why you'd assemble them just doesn't make sense. And I've never read the Suicide Squad comics, so I don't know if that's like the classic assembled like the team setup or whatever. I have no idea, so I can't talk on that level. But just on a practical level for this movie, that seems fucking stupid.
It's really stupid, and again, going back to my original point of the only reason the Suicide Squad has to do anything is because the Suicide Squad is assembled, and one of their members, Enchantress, who's really the only super powerful one, gets out. But even then, why send those 5 people to get her? Like, it could clearly... The Flash is in this universe. Aquaman is in this universe.
Batman's in this universe if you want her dead.
Exactly. The post-credits scene is Bruce going to Amanda Waller to get the files on Flash, Aquaman, Cyborg, all these people. And we know Batman's already teamed up with Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
It's like...
Yeah, we know that Wonder Woman is, like, out there and, like, willing to fight again after all the Doomsday shit. And, so why isn't she showing up to beat up Enchantress?
And look, I get it. There is some amount of just, you have to just buy into it. Right? And that's okay, because it's the same... Marvel runs into this sometimes, too, where it's like... Realistically, in some of the solo movies, you would think Tony or Cap or someone would call in one of the other Avengers.
Yeah, but they're all busy fighting their own villains.
Well, and I think it's something that you can just sort of accept. It's not that ludicrous. And in the Avengers movie, even though, you would think, oh, what's the reason to have Black Widow and Hawkeye? They very quickly establish why you need Black Widow and Hawkeye. Yeah. They give them things to do. Every person on that team accomplishes something that without them, the mission wouldn't work. Yeah. And you can't say that again because 2/5 of that team aren't even characters. To say Captain Boomerang or Killer Croc are characters is horseshit. They don't talk. They can't be characters. Right. And Killer Croc, like the makeup, the poor actor who, I'm not going to try to say his name, but he was Mr. Echo on Lost. He was Lost. Yeah. He was in
I didn't know he was in this.
Yeah, he's a great actor, and the poor dude, he's just behind all this makeup, and he just has to mumble all his dialogue because they don't really allow him to talk, and they didn't decide to overdub it, apparently. So it's just like, that's all bad.
You could just assume every single line is, why am I here? I just stumble. I like to hang out in the sewer sometimes. I have a skin condition. I work out. Like, why am I here?
Yes.
Get me the fuck out of this. Take this bomb out of my neck. I'll do some paperwork for you. I work as an accountant. I shouldn't be here.
The other super stupid thing is that they keep trying to pass it off like Amanda Waller is giving them a good deal because it's time off their prison sentence. But at the end, you find out it's only 10 years off, and Captain Boomerang says, but I'm serving 3 life terms. That doesn't help me. And so really what she's doing is she's just holding them hostage and forcing them to do it.
Threatening them with death to get them to do shit.
That's not a good story.
Yeah.
Because, at least in, Escape from New York, I think Snake Plissken, there's more to him than just he's got the bomb in his neck, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
It was like that movie's, it's an action movie with, a strong focus on, visuals and character. That, it doesn't need... it's a campy movie. It doesn't need that much, right?
So, yeah. But to do it with a whole team, you're basically saying none of these people have motivations that are relevant to the film itself. That's a really big problem.
Yeah.
What if it was Amanda Waller said, I'll let you out or something? That's stupider of her, but that then gives them something to fight for.
Yeah.
But no, that's not what they do. It's 10 years off triple life term. What the fuck are you talking about?
And all these guys are going to fucking escape either way. They don't need this bullshit. They've they're comic book villains. They've broken out of prison more times than you can count.
Yes. So, whatever. All dumb. What should I talk about next? I don't even know. What do you want to hear about? Should I jump into Harley Quinn now?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Boy. Actually, I want to ask you a question, Sean.
Okay, go ahead.
Sean, in typical Batman media, let's say the animated series, which is the definitive version of Harley Quinn, it's where she comes from. And then in things that have come after that, how would you describe the Joker and Harley Quinn's relationship?
Asexual, completely asexual. At least on the part of the Joker. Harley is fascinated, and I would say probably sexually attracted to the Joker. But she is obsessed with him because of how he manipulated her, and he just uses her constantly. He is just manipulating her and doesn't care about her. He only cares about Batman.
Yes. In fact, I was watching the Mad Love episode this weekend because I pulled my DVDs out and I was like, I want to watch some Batman, and so I put in that one because that's an episode they kind of quote for this movie. And a great episode.
Yes, definitely.
Obviously, it's actually the last one in that series with the Joker and Harley in it. So it's got the weird Joker animation, which is fun.
Yeah, it's got the season 4 stuff.
And, I was struck again by just how good that show is, how great the voice acting is. Arlene Sorkin, fucking great. Mark Hamill. But I was also struck by how sort of well written that relationship is, where it's even more that he's totally dismissive of her. You get the sense that not only is he manipulative of Harley, he doesn't even really need her or want her around, but he likes the kind of ego boost maybe of just her being one of his lackeys, but he doesn't ever view her as more than one of his lackeys.
Yeah, exactly. She's just a henchman to him.
Yes, and in that episode she even tries to put on what for the animated series would be a kind of sexy night dress. And again, it's not really revealing. It's just she's wearing a nightgown and she's trying to get him to come to bed, and he slaps her because he's trying to defeat Batman.
Yeah,
and she's always trying to help him, and she's always trying to be nice and get him to like feel better about the world, and he just doesn't care. He's obsessed with Batman and other things. And so it's this really powerful, and I think why Harley has endured as a character is it's this very powerful, one-way street relationship where it's a metaphor for abusive relationships.
Yes.
If she pines for this guy, he doesn't really care. He keeps her around because he likes the power he gets, and he literally, physically abuses her. It is not aspirational. It is not meant to be a good thing. You are meant. Harley is an intensely sympathetic character, I think, in that series.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a key part of it is also that her character development over the course of the animated series and then continuing into the comic books, she grows more and more distant from the Joker in a lot of ways. Like that's where her friendship with Poison Ivy comes from. In a lot of ways, like if you're going to have like a narrative-heavy focus on Harley Quinn these days, and not something more like the Arkham games where she's just sort of there as one of a big number of characters as like the villains gallery and stuff. If you're going to have a heavy narrative focus on Harley Quinn, I'm way more interested in Harley Quinn trying to get past the Joker now than her still obsessed with the Joker. And that also makes way more sense for her on the Suicide Squad. And so that was kind of what I was assuming way before we learned more about the movie. The kind of Harley Quinn they were going to do is her, like, the Joker stuff was in her past, and she's trying to move past it and just can't quite do it. Instead, it sounds like she's like still completely obsessed with him and stuff.
Completely, not just completely obsessed with him, but he's obsessed with her. They completely. Okay. I feel like that is the most fundamental thing about that relationship is that it's unrequited.
Yes, absolutely.
And again, I'm fine with the characters evolving. It's okay to do different things with them. But if you have a Joker-Harley relationship where they are both in love with each other, it's no longer the relationship.
Yeah,
it's like doing Romeo and Juliet where they hate each other. Like, then you're not doing Romeo and Juliet anymore. Yeah. It's like, it's so weird to me. And so, like, his whole motivation in this movie is he just wants his girlfriend back. And, like, when he gets her, they're making out, and they're clearly, all sexually attracted. And again, there's that fucking bizarre nightclub scene where they literally have Harley go-go dancing in a cage.
Okay.
There's that for you. And he's like, Harley, come over here. And she comes over, and he's like, you want to fuck my girl? I know he doesn't say fuck, but it's basically that. It's like a scene from Goodfellas or something.
Right.
And then he's like, no, you don't get to fuck my girl, and beats the dude to death, and then they start making out. And it's so... And there are people who are legitimately saying, like, this is a great version of the Joker Harley. I never thought we'd see it done this well. That's not the Joker and Harley.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to put it.
But you don't get it. She calls him Mr. J. So it's the Harley Quinn we've always known and loved, Jonathan.
It's like in the Amazing Spider-Man movies where people like, that's Spider-Man! Because he quits
when he's like swinging onto the stage and like making it to graduation just in time and grabs Gwen Stacy and kisses her in front of everyone. Yeah, that's the Peter Parker I know and love.
Like, I don't care how accurate you have the surface, and I would argue the surface is not accurate in either of these examples.
Right.
But if you have the surface accurate, it doesn't matter if the foundations are completely false and wrong.
Right.
And I really do think that is a fundamental betrayal of those characters and a misunderstanding if you have them both sort of in love with each other and you don't go any further with it. Like, at no point does the Joker betray this relationship or just seem like he's looking out for number one. His whole motivation is to save her. It becomes an aspirational romance.
Right, yeah.
And there's one Joker scene I forgot to mention earlier.
Okay.
In the movie's credit, he's got one more scene, and it's Harley at one point is walking up some stairs, and she looks down, and for some reason, in a like New York-style skyscraper, there's a vat of chemicals. I don't know why, and she has a flashback to that scene in the trailers where they dive into the chemical bath together.
Right.
And that's the scene that is both the most infuriating and possibly promising scene in the movie to me, because I would actually like to see that scene like at full length, because again, it's one of those ones that like they have to cut it so choppy that they do a lot of this stuff where they like between the cuts have like this whirring sound and the screen goes kind of white, that kind of thing.
Right.
Because they have to get around continuity issues. They've cut it so much. But basically it's the Joker trying to get Harley to like fully declare her love for him and to prove it she's going to dive into the chemicals, and then he goes after her and saves her. And that's like kind of her birth as Harley Quinn.
Okay.
And so, but the way it's done, the way it's scored, the way it is presented in the theatrical cut of the movie, which I don't care what stuff was left on the cutting room floor, this is the movie that is in theaters now.
Yeah.
That is supposed to be like this big, swooningly romantic scene in the like Hot Topic emo style romance, where this is an aspirational thing that you would dive into the chemicals together.
Yeah, it's My Chemical Romance.
It's like that. It's like Twilight, where it's like it's really romantic that Bella is like hurting herself to get Edward to love her. Right, it's that kind of thing. It's this really really juvenile, young adult, hot topic, emo-style view of romance that is in no way, to me, true or empowering or humane or interesting.
Right.
And the movie views it, I think, completely as like cool and aspirational, because there's no come down. There's no moment where Harley has to get over this because she thinks the Joker dies, but she's still in love with him and all this stuff. And like her fantasy, there's this scene at the end where Enchantress like sends them all to this like inner fantasy world where they like see their deepest dreams realized, and she's trying to trick them. And Harley's is, she's like a wife and mother, and the Joker is just Jared Leto out of the makeup, and which is kind of weird because you realize Jared Leto does not look menacing with the makeup. Right. Anyway,
what is Captain Boomerang's?
I don't know if we get one for him.
Oh. I was hoping it was him coming home to like this white picket fence and this big boomerang with like a bow on top opens the door.
No,
like, come inside. I think they have a little boomerang in a basket.
I think we only get Deadshot, Harley, and maybe Diablo.
Okay.
We don't get Killer Croc or Boomerang. I'm sure of that because they don't matter. The movie makes it very clear they don't matter.
That's a really weird thing that you do the whole like sort of cliche like inner fantasy dream sequence, and you only do it for some of the members of your main cast.
So anyway, that's like Harley's scene at the end. So all the way to the end, this is what she's pining for. She never has to learn to get over it, really. She never has to realize this was abusive. None of those realizations that are core to her character in all other incarnations are present here. And yes, I am fully aware that if you piece together stuff from the trailers and reports, the story was going to be very different. The Joker was going to throw her out of that helicopter. She wasn't going to fall. And he was going to try to come back later, and she would say no. And it would have been a much more like what we were expecting, where she has to get over him.
It would have given her a character arc.
Yes. She has no character arc in the movie as written because the movie ends with the Joker rescuing her. I mean, what are you supposed to read from that otherwise? And so this is why, like, I and others have complained about the white picket fence scene where she is like the stay-at-home mom with the Joker and the kids.
Right.
And, you know, some people have pointed out online that, like, on its own, that's not necessarily bad. If a woman wants to be a wife and mother, that's sexist to say that's bad. And I agree. People can want that. That's fine.
Yeah.
In the context of this film,
yes,
that is bad.
Yes.
You haven't seen it. Can you explain?
I mean, it's something where, because there's a thing called cultural context, and there's also a thing called like cultural history. And in our history, in our culture, is that scene, that fantasy of the woman working at home and having like, and then the father comes home and he's from a hard day at work, and she's there and she's making him dinner and she's doing everything for the kids, and that's perfect and happy. It's the life she's always wanted to have. As someone who studied a lot of Victorian literature, I can tell you exactly where that comes from. And it comes from an incredibly toxic understanding of gender that we are not over yet. And so while it is okay, it's more than okay, it's totally fine, and it's something that's totally acceptable, whether you're a man or a woman, to want to, if you are afforded the opportunity, to be a stay-at-home parent and take care of your kids and do the chores and live that lifestyle and have that kind of relationship. That's fine. But in media, when you are presenting that kind of fantasy, you're not calling to like contemporary society and saying like people who live this way in like our modern society, like we need to get past that kind of stigma. You're not doing that. You are calling back to that Victorian idealized version of the woman as the angel in the kitchen, taking care of everything while the man is outside doing all the hard work.
Okay, and that's part one.
Yes.
Totally awesome. Love that explanation. Part two of that, though, is that the way, in the context of the film itself,
right,
I think it's extra problematic because it's Harley being stripped of all identity. It's Margot Robbie out of the makeup. It's Jared Leto out of the makeup. It's not her being Harley Quinn or having to learn to be Harley Quinn. And again, in a movie where the Joker and her relationship is presented as romantic and aspirational and genuine, it's her ultimate fantasy at the end of the movie being just for more of that, but also her identity just being suppressed.
Yeah.
So it's like it's on these two levels. I think there's the cultural context, and then I think there's this film's context. And so I find that scene very problematic in that it just shows me how little they understand, A, women, and B, Harley Quinn.
Yeah, and then the other thing is that, like, because here's the other thing that is still, I think, is tied into the cultural context, that it feels like the context of the film as well, is that if, and it sounds like this is, like you said, another version of this movie would have had this be different, but the version we got is this, where Harley Quinn's, one of her main character characteristics, the defining characteristics of her, is her obsession with the Joker. And most versions of Harley Quinn, like the version from the cartoon that we understand, that's like a starting point, and it evolves that and uses that as a way to really dive into her psychology, and I think is very aware of, again, like that is part of the cultural context of where a lot of our sort of assumptions on gender come from, is that idea of the woman as an angel at home, is that her life revolves around the man's life. That she's obsessed with the man, she does everything for the approval of the man, she fixed up the house for the man, so that when he comes home from a hard day's of work, everything is good for him. And that is not okay. Like, it's fine for you to have to be the stay-at-home parent and, like, do the house chores and all of that, but you should do that for you. You should do that for you as a person, not just for the person you are in a partnership with. It's an equal trade thing, right? And so the thing with Harley Quinn, the reason why her relationship with the Joker is toxic, and it's supposed to be presented as toxic, and has historically been presented as toxic, is that her obsession with the Joker is bad for her and destroys who she is. And she needs to learn to move past that. And we've seen lots of stories where she does try to move past it. It sounds like in this movie, she doesn't move past it because the Joker saves her at the end. And she doesn't have a moment of rejecting that life with the Joker. So, like, that inner fantasy that is presented, she is never encountered with a scenario where she has to contradict that and realize that she is just kind of bowing to these social expectations on her and doing this for the Joker and not doing this for what she actually wants to do.
Exactly. And I think if we bring in the sort of editorial context where they had a different version of the movie, what's so weird is that they had something like that and chose to go in this direction.
Right.
Because what it becomes at the end is she sees that fantasy and then she sort of tricks Enchantress by talking like, can you bring Mr. J back, all that. And then she says, well, I'd like that, but I'd rather save my friends or whatever. And so Harley gets to be heroic, but that's not her really choosing to reject the Joker. That's just her not choosing to embrace Enchantress.
Right.
So I feel like they botched this character so bad. And yeah, she's really heavily sexualized in this. And
if you have seen the trailers, you know that. And
if you think it's okay, I don't know what to say. I feel like I've said it and it's falling on deaf ears at this point. I hate the argument, I wrote about this in my review, that, it's okay that she's super hypersexualized because she knows what she looks like to men and she uses it to manipulate men. That is just couching sexism in a different way.
Also, does she use that to manipulate men in the movie? Does she use her sexuality?
Sometimes, sort of, but not really.
Okay.
Not really, no. I mean, because who's she manipulating? Like, she and Deadshot basically become friends, so she's not manipulating him.
Right.
Rick Flag isn't taking any of it, so she's not manipulating him. And for the Joker, like in the nightclub scene, she's just go-go dancing. Like, it's just and again, like, I don't have a problem with that, like, in the world, necessarily. If a woman wants to do that or something, I don't necessarily think that has to be inherently sexist. In the context of this movie, she is there as a sex object. The camera focuses on her ass over and over again. Like, Michael Bay would blush watching this movie, and the way it kind of uses Margot Robbie's body. Like, that scene in the trailer of her getting dressed, it's actually much slower and longer in the film, things like that. And, like, when they do a little nod to when she's getting, like, dressed at the prison, she has a few outfits, and one of them is her animated series outfit.
Right.
And she's like, and then she throws that aside, and then she's in the booty shorts and stuff. When I say shorts, they're just panties. I mean, they're basically like a step away from just being a thong and then sort of leggings.
Right.
And, a shirt that gets wet very quickly.
Okay.
And stuff like that. So you basically see, through to her bra through the whole movie and stuff like that. And it's distracting. It's distracting because the movie visually, in the visual language of the film, is viewing her as a sex object first, character second.
When, like, the movie's not narratively doing anything with that.
No, not at all. Not in the slightest. I think that's bullshit. The whole, she knows her sex. Like, that's such a sexist argument to me on the other side. And again, if we want to go into Marvel, I think there's like two scenes total with Black Widow where they do that. There's one in Iron Man 2 where Tony's briefly distracted and she knocks him out. And there's one in The Avengers early on. But it's not really her even flaunting her sexuality. It's just that Scarlett Johansson is pretty. Right. It's not like they go in like Joss Whedon has a full-on shot of her breasts or something.
Right, yeah.
They don't really do that to her.
No.
And so it's just as visual presentation goes, it's problematic, especially taking a character who historically has really not been sexualized to that degree and making her completely a sexual object when, you're not doing it to anyone else in the movie. Don't give me the...
Hey, Captain Boomerang's pretty hot, I don't think that's a boomerang in his pants, if you know what I'm saying.
And, don't give me the Joker has his shirt off. It's a totally different thing. He's not being sexualized. The movie does not focus on Jared Leto's cock or anything.
Sure.
Like, it's a different set of standards the movie is using, and I think it sells out Harley Quinn in so many different ways. And if I were Margot Robbie, I don't know why I would ever want to do more of this. Because it's just such disrespect, I feel like, as a performer. And I think that's true for all of the actors in this movie. I mean, the only two people who walk away really leaving an impact are Will Smith and Viola Davis. And if I were Viola Davis, I'd run for the hills because, one, I heard what Jared Leto, did with her on set.
Right, yeah.
And two, just like, I don't think that's anything really to play, and she's an actress who has so many more opportunities than this. And then for Will Smith, like, he's trying, he's giving it his all here, but it's not a character. It's his whole thing is he wants his daughter back. Great, haven't seen that before.
Yeah.
And
what was Sandman and Spider-Man 3. That was literally the exact same thing.
Better done.
Yes.
There. Man, remember when people thought Spider-Man 3 was the worst superhero movie?
Yeah, right? Man.
Halcyon days, those.
Yeah.
But, I mean, so I don't know why Will Smith would come back. I just don't know why, if you were a part of this movie, you would ever want to do more, especially if you're Jared Leto, apparently, putting a lot of work into this thing and totally misunderstanding what method acting is.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. And then you're not in the movie in the end. It's like, well, why would you ever come back to this shit?
Yeah.
Like, they're going to make a sequel, obviously, because it's made a lot of money. But, God, if I were one of these actors, I would be telling my agent, like, please get me out of this contract. I've got to have better opportunities than this.
Maybe if all of them leave, and then it's just the Captain Boomerang and Killer Croc movie, and like they finally get to do something with those characters.
I don't know, man. This movie pissed me off. I actually did walk out about 3 minutes before the end. I was trying to stick it out.
You missed the best part, Jonathan. Your whole opinion on the movie would be different if you saw the last 3 minutes. Trust me.
Here's why I left. Because it had been a little while since they'd used a pop song, and then it's a montage with him back in prison. And the fucking song from the trailers, the Bohemian Rhapsody kicks in.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I'm like,
that's
out.
The point of the movie where
I'm out. I'm not doing this anymore. I left, and the two people next to me left also. Like, there was a half-hour row just got up and walked out with the fucking movie, 3 minutes left. Good God, so bad. So bad.
But if you would have seen the brilliance of it in those last 3 minutes.
I was just angry, and I don't even know if I'm fully articulating why this one in particular made me so angry. I think part of it is I do like Harley Quinn as a character, and I think Batman killing people is bad. But Batman has killed people. That is not...
Sure.
That is not something Zack Snyder invented. That is
Technically, there are stories in Batman's history where he has killed people. That is technically true.
That's true. And all I'm saying is that I'm not saying it's ever good, but it is a mistake that is not new. Sure. I am used to Batman media making the mistake that Batman kills people.
Yeah.
Both of the Tim Burton movies do it. There are plenty of different bad comics that have done it.
Yeah.
Frank Miller does his thing.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, in The Dark Knight Returns, Batman doesn't kill, but whatever. Later on, he does. He blocks Robin in a basement. Batman has been misinterpreted plenty. Yeah. And I think because Harley Quinn is such a newer character, she's been relatively well treated in franchise media.
Yeah.
This is bad. I think wasting so many of these other characters and not having anything for them to do is bad. And I think it's just, again, I can't stress the worst thing about it is how it's made and how it's edited and how it's shot. And it's just so incoherent on every level. It's a really, really awful movie. And I think some people are saying, well, at least it's better than Batman v Superman because it's got some good performances. I would say, A, are we all forgetting how much we were praising Ben Affleck and how much we were saying, like, there were some other good people in that movie? I mean, we focus
Jeremy
on...
Irons had some funny lines.
He's good.
Even if he said those same funny lines, like, 24 times in the movie. Those are the only lines he had.
We were all saying Gal Gadot made quite an impression, even if it's not much in that movie. Like, I know
she was a breath of fresh air compared to most of the shit that was going on in that movie.
Like, I think we fixate on Jesse Eisenberg. Other than that, the acting is fine in that movie. Sure. The acting is not the problem in that film. The acting is not the problem in this film. I think this movie wastes its actors to a greater degree than that movie wasted its. Again, I think they mistreated Batman very much in the Batman v Superman movie, Ben Affleck still has time to shine as a performer. I think there are moments he has that are very good that frustrate me in that movie because I think they're hints of a better movie that could have been.
Yeah, and a much better version of the Batman character for Ben Affleck to play.
There's that scene where he's at his parents' grave and he's reflecting how he's older than his father ever was. I think that's actually put in a different movie. Verbatim, that's a very good scene.
Yeah.
I can't say that about anything in Suicide Squad. I don't think anyone... There's no better version of this movie to me, really. Like, maybe... if they had gotten to do more with the Joker and stuff, you could have Harley work better. But I'm also thinking...
But then also that would just distract from... Because the Joker has nothing to do with the plot of the movie. So, it would structurally be really fucking weird to do that.
Yeah. The effects in this movie are bad. The music just... There's no redeeming value to this movie as a whole to me. Or even in parts, because even the parts I want to like, I would want to like in a very, very different movie. Whereas, I look at Batman v Superman, and I can pretty easily... change that movie in my mind. I can say, you get rid of the Doomsday third act.
Yeah.
You have a Batman who's less extreme, but you have a story where it's a Batman who's become cynical. He encounters Superman. He's wary of him. Through meeting Superman, he kind of has a come-to-Jesus moment, and he and Superman sort of redeem each other. I think you can make that work.
Sure, yeah,
I can see the skeleton of a good movie in that. Yeah. It's really buried in Batman v Superman.
Yeah, you'd have to change a lot of what Batman v Superman did, but there's a good movie to be made.
I don't think... honestly, once you've picked Enchantress as your villain, I think you're pretty much fucked.
Yeah, like the whole plot of Suicide Squad just seems absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I hate this movie. I hate this movie so much.
I'm really glad I didn't see it.
I hate this movie similarly to how I hate Donald Trump.
Okay.
I'm on that level, and it's like all this shit mixed together, and people still defending the both of them. Fuck everything.
I think that's maybe a bit extreme, but okay.
It's extreme, I know.
Yes.
It's not as bad as Hitler 2.0.
Exactly. Like Suicide Squad is not like threatening to turn America into a fascist state.
Yes.
Let's have a bit of perspective here, Jonathan. We are talking about a movie.
So maybe I'll tone it down at some point. Right now, I just feel like I'm so done with the DC bullshit. I might come back for Wonder Woman, but if I hear any rumblings of that movie being a mess, I think I'm just going to have to stay clear because for my mental health, I just have to be done with this shit. It's so bad. They beat me into submission in 2 movies.
Both came out in the same year.
Same year. And you know what? We look back at Man of Steel now. Man of Steel wasn't that bad, was it?
No, I mean, it's still a horrible interpretation of that character, but as a movie, it is far more accomplished, certainly, than Batman v Superman. It sounds like way more accomplished than Suicide Squad. Absolutely. Like, it's a competently made film.
Scenes breathe.
Yeah.
Characters talk. Motivations are made clear. It's like, it's filmmaking.
General Zod is pretty good in that movie.
Yeah, it's got a villain who is cool.
Yes, yeah, and whose motivations and stuff basically makes sense.
I mean, fuck. Batman has the best rogues gallery in all of comics. That's something we all agree on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he is defined by his rogues. You've had 2 Batman movies this year, or Batman-adjacent movies, with terrible villains. What are you doing?
Yeah.
God. No Man's Sky. Let's talk about No Man's Sky.
A lot better than Suicide Squad.
Fuck this game. Wait, no, I'm sorry. I'm just in a bad mood.
Back up, Jonathan. Whoa. Calm down. No Man's Sky is the Donald Trump of video games. Wait, what?
No. No Man's Sky is not at all the Donald Trump of video games.
No, it's the opposite in a lot of ways.
Yes. Okay. I'm interested in hearing from you on this. I'll just say what I've played so far, I guess.
Okay, yeah.
No Man's Sky, I've gotten to like 5 or 6 galaxies, I think.
Okay.
And I've seen,
wait, 5 or 6 solar systems?
Sorry, solar systems.
I was going to say, it's like, you are really far into this game to a point that I didn't think you could be.
Yeah, no. Solar systems, and so I've seen all the planets in those places. I've gotten my hyperdrive and stuff. I've flown around. I've not gotten super deep into some of the narrative stuff that's kind of there in the background. But I think I've gotten a feel for all the mechanics and things. There are times with this game where I am amazed and I find it very fun and relaxing and invigorating. And there are other things about it I found very frustrating. So that's kind of where I am now. Okay. But you're much more enthusiastic, so I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. So, man, where do you even fucking start talking about this game? It's there's a lot to unpack, and there's a lot of stuff about, the game itself is very complex in a lot of ways that's sort of that you don't necessarily notice at first. And then also, I think the cultural conversation around No Man's Sky is a real
shit show.
It's something. It's a real kind of perplexing thing to me in some ways, and a real hard thing to dig into. So I guess I'll start with the game itself, for people who are not super familiar with the specifics of No Man's Sky, like, one, don't worry about spoilers. Spoil it. Like, literally, it's mathematically impossible to spoil the game if you're, like, at a very specific level. But, like, I'm sure everyone's sort of basically familiar with it from the trailers and stuff, because it's been at every single E3 for, like, 500 years. No Man's Sky is a space exploration game with survival mechanics that has a procedurally generated galaxy that has, as they've advertised, 18 quintillion planets, that's a big number. That is a way bigger number than anybody is ever going to be able to sort of understand. It's a bigger number than human consciousness is, like, sort of capable of sort of adjusting to. It's a number so big that I did the calculation yesterday that if the entire human population of 7 billion people somehow managed to discover a new planet in No Man's Sky every single second, it would take us 81 years to do it. That's how big of a number that is. And so when you have a player base that is probably a couple of million at its maximum and will more be like tens of thousands to maybe 100,000 of dedicated players that will keep on playing the game, we will never scrape more than like 2% of this game, probably not even quite 1% of this game, of like planets just discovered, let alone like sort of thoroughly explored.
And when you say the 18 quintillion thing, it's not literally they programmed 18 quintillion worlds and we're just not going to see them. It's that it's
procedurally generated.
It's where the algorithm ends.
Yeah. So it's and the whole sort of objective that the game kind of very vaguely gives you is you are sort of pointed towards the center of the galaxy and said, hey, like, go there. And there's a lot of different stuff you can do. There's some very light narrative elements. There are like alien species you meet along the way, but the bulk of the game is you like going to planets. Like going to a planet is completely seamless in your spaceship. You can just like go dive into the atmosphere from space, land on a planet, explore the planet, like catalog what alien species of like weird different alien life forms that have been procedurally generated, and look at those and classify them and go find minerals and find weird stuff on that planet until you're satisfied. Leave, go to another planet, go to another solar system, and along the way you just get more stuff, you get more money, you get more upgrades, and your ship gets better, your tools get better. And that's kind of the loop of the game. That's what No Man's Sky is, as sort of a longer form of an elevator pitch. But then to go into, I think, what I find really remarkable as No Man's Sky, and I think you need a bit of context about me as a person for why I like this as much as I do, is that No Man's Sky is a game that delivers something I've always wanted and have like just nothing has ever really done, which is to give me as a person some sort of interactive thing that allows you to put into some sort of engaging perspective the size of existence, of like the scale of things. And No Man's Sky to me is a game that very quietly thematizes scale and sort of loneliness and sort of like the singular kind of conscious sapient existence that you are in context to the rest of existence, and the sort of existential crisis that realization brings about. And I find that, like me very personally, that's something I've always wanted. It's always something I've been fascinated by. I've studied a lot of astronomy stuff on my own. I took like 5 or 6 different science classes in college that are focused on astronomy. I know more than the layman about like actual science and actual space science. I'm certainly no expert. Like I don't have a degree in it or anything. But it's been a personal interest of mine ever since I was a kid, and I would just sit in my bed and think about those distances and the concepts of like light itself, which is literally the fastest thing that anything can move in our universe, taking thousands of years to reach a star to where we are, and us seeing that light is that star 1,000 years into the past, because of just that's how massive the distances are. That's something that has always engaged me deeply as a person. And I think this game gives you the tools to sort of dwell in that kind of sort of philosophical crisis as an individual, while also being able to just sort of like fuck around and see weird stuff and mind stuff. But it does, and like I think the game is very specifically conscious in the way that it's constructed, the way it have multiplayer. Like it doesn't want like players to join together and go on weird adventures. It's not about combat. It's not about like all these sorts. It's not about like making a super awesome spaceship and going around and doing all that stuff. Like you can do all those things a little bit in small forms, but the game is fundamentally about exploration, and it is fundamentally about engaging with that problem of scale, because the game is gigantic planets that are basically planet-sized planets. Each solar system has like 4 to 5 planets on it. They are all huge. Some of them have moons, which are huge. Like, you will never, let alone exploring the galaxy, you will never fully explore one of the planets on this game. I mean, you don't want to, because they're all full of sort of cookie-cutter stuff. Like, obviously, they're not every single planet has like a Mass Effect story on it or something like that. But the planets themselves are of such a scale that you can't engage with, you cannot physically engage with the game on that level of one planet. You sure as shit can't engage with it on like the galactic level.
I couldn't agree with you more on all of this. And I think, if I had to point to my specific frustrations with some of the game mechanics, I think there are certain ways in which the game holds me back from enjoying exactly what you're describing.
Right.
And I want to talk about those later. I do think those are ultimately minor. I think the bigger issue that's held me back from super diving into it right now is that it is so, and this is not a complaint, I'm just saying this is kind of an attitudinal thing almost.
Yeah.
The game is so big and it offers you so much. And what I was struck by most was actually the size of the individual planets. Because I thought it was going to be more like the typical video game thing, which is a planet is like a little continent.
Yeah, it's like Mass Effect. Like, this game is a lot like Mass Effect 1's planet exploration, in a lot of way blown up. But like Mass Effect 1 gives you like, you land on a planet and explore with the Mako, and it's like this little like half a square mile big like chunk on the top of the planet, and I explored the planet, yay, let's go. Like, this is not that.
No, not at all. And so that alone it's very disarming, I think.
Yeah.
And I think unless you're like, okay, I have the time and the energy and the mindset to commit myself to this.
Yeah.
To really throw myself into it. Not, as you say, to explore every inch of these planets, because you're not going to, you're not able to, and you wouldn't want to, but to just be willing to do that and to throw yourself into it, it's very daunting in that way. And I think...
But it's like supposed to be daunting.
No, and I'm not, again, I'm not...
the point, this is daunting.
I think this is appraising almost.
Yeah.
And I think some of what why I haven't fully dived into the game yet is, as I say, my interests are kind of just split at the moment. And so when I'll play No Man's Sky, I just feel a little overwhelmed. There's this like anxious part of my brain that wants to categorize and see things in a way where it's like, once I realize how much I have to do just when I get to one world, I like freeze up almost. And again, I think that's to the game's credit, because I can't really name another game that makes me feel that way. And so, that's where I am excited to dive more into the game.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to say that because I think some of what I've seen in the critical reaction I agree with, and some of it is I think some people are feeling what I'm feeling and maybe feeling it as a negative and not seeing that you don't have to like it or anything. And I think it is a much more niche game than it is marketed as.
Yeah.
But some of that is, I think, totally by design. The artistic point is the dauntingness of it. And either that daunting nature pulls you in or it keeps you at arm's length. Either way, on an artistic level, that feels honest. And I think that's all you can ask.
Yeah, and it's something where, for me, a lot of the critical response to the game, like, I understand why it has been responded, like why people feel about this game the way they do. That is, like, there are some reviews and sort of like impressions and stuff out there, and like some of my favorite video game critics are like really glowing about it and like really love it and are engaging with it on like that level that I'm talking about, of like this sort of weird existential level, and that's the sort of feelings it inspires in them.
Yes.
But then there are a lot of people that are so fixated on the minute to minute, like, I'm just tired of fucking mining plutonium, and that's all they talk about in the game is like the survival mechanics. And for my perspective on how I feel playing the game, it's like, however you feel about it, it's how you feel about it. That's fine. But sometimes it feels like you are missing the forest for the trees, dude. Like, you are like, and it's almost something like about human psychology again, that like it feels like this game feels like this game is making so many statements just for the sheer fact of it being as like monumentally gigantic as it is, because again, like, you cannot actually understand how big this game is. Like, 18 quintillion planets is a number you don't even understand, and like, planets themselves are fucking huge. Like, nobody can understand the scale of this game, and it having that kind of scale of like 18 trillion planets, 18 trillion, that would have been more than enough. Like, 18 billion planets would have been more than enough. 18 quintillion? So you have to go trillion, quadrillion, then quintillion. That's just fucking with you, right? Like, that's like so many like powers of 10 over where you need to be to have a galaxy so big that it's going to be unlikely that any player in it is ever going to find each other. That like, it's making a statement by just being that big, and it's making a statement about so many things that like, And it's one of those things with the human psychology element of looking at some players that are so focused on the like minute-to-minute tasks of the game and just leveling up their character and getting whatever like thing is around the next corner to get to the next star system because they just want to get to the center of the galaxy, and so they're just trying to mainline that, and they're doing this, and they're playing it so much like it's just another video game that like you're looking at that as like you are just like it's just like real life in a weird way. This is like you're just so focused on what you are doing, you're not looking up at like what is out there and thinking like, holy fucking shit, dude. Like, and in normal life, you don't need to do that all the time because you can't go out there. Like all the infinite possibilities of the universe that aren't actually infinite, but what feels like the infinite possibilities of the universe are so far outside of our reach as actual people that, like, of course we're just focusing on the everyday and never thinking about the fact that it's like, oh my god, like, we live for, like, at most, like, 100 years, and the universe is 13.8 billion years old. Like, that's a big difference. Like, those timescales, those are very, very different things. Like, the Earth has been around for a couple of billion years. I've been around for 100. I'm just going to kill myself now because I can't deal with that scale. Like, we can't do that as people. That's what we are.
And I think that's one of the things I was saying earlier. Like, you can get to that point existentially where you have to stop thinking about it because it, like, fucks with you, you know? And I think you can reach that point in No Man's Sky potentially very early on where it's like, I have to stop playing this right now because it's fucking with me.
Yeah.
And I actually do think, even if I were to never play it again, and I'm not going to, I'm going to play more of it. Yeah. But if I were to say after the 4 or 5, however many hours I've spent with it, that I was kind of done because maybe it just felt too daunting to me, that alone is an artistic statement I found genuine and would stick with me.
Yeah.
And that alone kind of justifies my time with the game, even if it was minor, which, as I say that, sounds very profound in a way that this game makes you think about life, which is that even if the time is minor, it is profound. You know, so those sorts of things.
Yeah. It is that thing where this game does, for as, like, monumentally huge as it is, it always feels to me like it has that kind of indie game heart, whereby it does feel like it is making these sort of, like, statements about scale, or even if it's not actually making statements about scale, it is just by presenting the scale. It is forcing you to draw conclusions about it through your own experiences, and is doing that, like, in the exact same way that something like Inside earlier this year does that, but on, like, the human level and with intimacy and with, like Inside is so obsessed with, like, your sort of internal, I mean, you know, it's called Inside, but, like, your internal psychology and, like, the flesh of you and, like, getting intimate and deep and so focused on, like, the subject of the little boy that you're playing as and all that stuff. And so, and I feel like Inside is very successful at that part in a way that a lot of indie games aren't, but most indie games are so fixated on that, like, very human, intimate, personal level and exploring that because a lot of video games aren't very good at that. And No Man's Sky, I just love it. It has the same sort of kind of indie philosophy to me, especially because it's, you know, the game is made by, like, a 20-person team. It's fucking ridiculous. But it goes so on the so completely opposite side of it, of where it's like, the game doesn't give a shit about you. The way the universe doesn't give a shit about you. Like, you can't even see yourself. And you are tiny. You are tiny compared to, like, everything in this galaxy. You are tiny compared to your spaceship. You're tiny compared to a lot of the animals. You're tiny compared to the flora on the planets. You're tiny compared to the planets themselves, the spaceships. And it's like, you are so nothing, and there's nobody, like, you don't have any social elements in this world. Like, there is a theoretical social capacity by which you can name things, which is one of my favorite parts of the game. This is a fantastic naming simulator. If you want to just go in and name weird shit, this is the game for you, and that's one of my favorite things to do on a planet, is just name the animals and stuff.
I've had fun with that.
Yeah. Like, that's a really fun part. But, like, other than that, of if another person hypothetically one day does stumble upon a planet you've seen, or you stumble upon a planet another person has discovered, you will see that they discovered it and see if they named it, like, Butthole Planet, you will see that it's called Butthole Planet now. There's nothing you can do about it. It will forever be Butthole Planet. But
did you name one of your planets Butthole?
No, I've been very serious. I tend to name all my systems and, like, planets and stuff after, like, different pantheons, and then the animals are where I get very serious or not very serious, where I get very silly about, like, cave splorches and stuff like that, you know. But yeah, so, like, the game does have this sort of, it feels like to me, and a lot of the text of, like, in ruins and temples you find has this attitude of, like, the universe just sort of flipping its middle fingers at you. It's just like, who cares? Who cares? Like, you're going around, you're getting all this plutonium, you're, like, maybe you're killing all the wildlife on this one planet because you're a dick. Like, who knows what you're doing? You're, like, taking all these gold deposits and you're, like, just to go on your way. And there's some of the critical reaction, I did put a tweet out about this because I just, like, at some point it was driving me crazy. There's a critical response to this game that is a very sort of, like, actual critical response of the people looking at us and being like, oh, this game is just, it's just the ultimate colonialist fantasy of it's just, you're just going from place to place and just destroying the indigenous life and taking everything for yourself and just using it to fuel your journey so selfishly. And I look at that as like, did you motherfuckers not see the title of the game you're playing? It's called literally No Man's Sky. The game is about the fact that colonialism is fucking stupid. It's the stupidest thing humanity has ever done. It's our own ego of like, that we're going around and we're labeling all this shit and we're naming it and we're taking all these things and we think we're so cool. We're the master of all this stuff. We can go and we're the master of everything because we can name this weird duck thing the flying Blazigar, and like that's like all of them are now flying Blazigars. And when I look at them, I think of that, and these things are mine because I've named them. This planet is mine because I've taken its riches for myself. And then you fly off and go, ha ha ha! I am the colonialist, like, master of the universe. And then you stop for a second and think, it's like, what did you do? You walked around on this planet for 10 minutes. You took some plutonium crystals. You took you had a little deposit of gold, and you took that and you killed a little weird cave spider thing and call it a stupid head butt thingy. And it's like, ha ha ha! I am this colonialist guy, and this is my ultimate colonialist fantasy. And the galaxy is laughing at you because that's one planet in one system in a galaxy that has 18 quintillion planets. Humans are so small that the idea that we can label things and that being meaningful, the idea that we can impact the universe in any way is so fucking laughable. And that's what this game does. It's No Man's Sky. And the reason why it's No Man's Sky is because nobody can possibly own this because there's too much of it. Like, even if every planet had sentient life on it, there's too much of it, you know? And that's like, so the game, I feel like, is constantly doing that. It's constantly quietly laughing at your efforts of going and saying, it's like, oh, I labeled all the animals on this planet and I got my extra money for it, and so I did everything on the planet and I left. It's like you satisfied your own weird video game collectivist thing you have. And there have been some good writing on this. Ben Kuchera had a pretty good piece on Polygon about this, about how the game is just so kind of mocking the collectivist attitude that video game players have of like going in and having to get everything in every single corner and getting all the feathers in Assassin's Creed and all that kind of stuff. And this is a game where not only will no one player see everything or label every species and all that, the entire player base for playing this game for thousands of years will never do that. We as a species will never be able to do that. And that's another thing I kind of want to talk about is the technological achievement of this game is so sort of fascinating to me, of that we as a species have made this thing of what is a static galaxy. Like, it's not, they didn't like go and design every single planet, but the way that but the galaxy is shared among the player base. It exists theoretically in there, that we have created this thing that we cannot fully explore and cannot in the like actual terms fully understand. Like, we as a species have made this thing that we can't engage with on like in a mathematical way. It is impossible for us to know everything that exists in this game at once. That's just fucking crazy.
It is, and you kind of have to stop and think about that every time you see something technically janky in the game, because there's plenty of technical jankiness.
Yeah, like there's weird like texture pop-ins when you go onto the planet and stuff like that.
There's the draw distance is almost non-existent. It's when you're flying around and.
Considering what it is, the draw distance is not that bad. It's not like an N64 game or something.
No, I think there are times when I'm trying to get from one place to another that it becomes tough to play the game because it's so.
I haven't really had that.
It's all blur. Maybe it works differently for you in a different.
I don't know. Like I don't feel like I don't have that sense. Do you mean when you're walking around on a planet, or like
more when I'm on the ship going low over it?
Oh yeah, well, that's not like like there's a weird texture pop in that happens in the game. So yeah, like that when you're trying to fly low over the planet very quickly with your ship, it is hard to see like individual things because they are not loaded in yet.
Yeah,
but I feel like, but I don't feel like the game is designed in such a way that you're like supposed to do that all the time. Like you're supposed to get like signals for that indicate where like a shelter is or something, and like fly the ship there that way, not necessarily fly all over the planet, like just sort of like trying to look very closely at what's there.
I get it. I guess I want to back up and talk about some of my frustrations because I do want to get your thoughts on these.
Yeah.
And again, this is in no way me trying to negate the game or write it off.
Right,
But
yeah.
it's just things that have kind of gotten in the way of enjoying it the way, like, at its peak, I am enjoying it, and kind of what you're describing as, I think, kind of the ideal version of this game.
Yeah, the big sort of, like, the big level of what the game is doing.
Yes, absolutely. And it's little things that every once in a while, I could play for when I'm really in the groove and I'm playing it, and I get to that feeling of like, man, I'm so happy to be kind of just walking around this planet and seeing like, oh, that's over there and I could go do that.
Yeah.
And this is over here and I could find that. And then if I get bored, I see a moon up there and I could just fly to it. And that's so cool.
Yeah.
And I can just give things little names and that's fun. And I just love exploring it at its best. This feels to me almost like, there's a game I reference a lot, I know, but Proteus or something, which is also sort of this procedurally generated thing, or any other indie game where...
Actually, I think Proteus is just a static island. I don't think it's procedurally generated.
No, it's different every time.
Is it? Oh, okay.
Yes, yeah.
I guess you only played it once. But.
Okay, yeah. It's different every time. It's actually very similar in that it's a lot of the same art assets, but they just come in different forms. Yeah. But anyway, or other indie games where it's just the point is sort of the exploration, it's not the ultimate goal. And I love that kind of thing, and I love just seeing all those sights. But there are moments in No Man's Sky where it pulls me out of that very hard, because either you're missing something you need, and it's like nowhere around me, and you can't move very fast, and now my ship's out of gas, and I don't really know where to go, and that can feel just kind of like I'm stranded. And that's its own experience in some way, yes. The biggest frustration for me is the combat stuff. I've never won a space dogfight so far when I'm up there, and I just end up dying every time and having to reload a save, and it feels like kind of a big buzzkill every time I'm off flying and I'm kind of in my groove, and then someone comes in and just shoots me down, and I can't even really figure out the controls for how to get the gun moving where I need it to move to shoot them or aim or anything like that. And on the planet, I'm not usually killed by the like sentinels or anything, but it does feel a little annoying because it's just this break in what's going on that, I don't know, it feels like sometimes there are too many mechanics to me. Like, I think what it's ultimately aiming for should be a little simpler. Like, I think with what I've played so far, I guess I would kind of prefer a version of this game that was a little more stripped down. I like some of the mining stuff just because it gives you sort of minute-to-minute goals that are good to have.
Yeah.
But then there are just those little frustrations where I don't think I need there to be necessarily any combat, and I think the level it is sort of half-hearted and doesn't go... There's either not enough or there's too much. And it's always on that line for me. And just little things like that where I feel like there should be mechanically simpler. Like, maybe I don't need a gun that is upgradable and all that stuff. Maybe just have the weapon, and maybe just have the ship, and those things are just those things. And then it's just the focus on the exploration. And I think a lot more people might see what the game really is if it didn't have that level that kind of got in the way, to me, of what is the ideal version of the game.
Yeah, although, like, just really quick on your last point, I think, like, if the game didn't have those things, like, if it didn't have kind of the reward loops of the upgradable stuff and all that, and didn't, like, I don't like the combat, and we'll talk about that in a second, but if it didn't have the combat, but it still is this, like, $60 mainstream thing, I think people would like it even less. Like,
no, you're probably right, and that's a place where the game just feels compromised to me.
I think like I don't have as big a problem with it as you do, because I think the game generally does like avoids the combat most of the time. Like the combat, like I haven't had a huge issue with the dogfight stuff. I've only done a couple of them, and there was only one that I kind of lost, and then after that I've been mostly fine with it. It never feels great. I like the ship combat a lot more than the on-ground combat, which is just really, the controls do not feel like they're meant to engage with that stuff, but the only times I've really had to do is like a couple of sentinel things, and then mostly it's just like some asshole cave spider monster has attacked me and I just zap it really quickly, and that level I'm fine with, just because it gives for me, like, what is valuable about that is it gives some of the fauna on the planets a bit more identity beyond them just being like cool looking things that you never quite know. Oh, is that big T-Rex looking thing a nice, friendly big T-Rex looking thing? Or if I get a little bit too close to it, is it just going to eat me and kill me?
I like that part very much. I think this is one of the other things that's going to be interesting to compare, is that everyone's experience with this is going to be different, because we're fundamentally in different parts of this galaxy seeing different things, right?
Yeah.
I get attacked by ships every other time I go into space. I'm not exaggerating. It happens to me so much that I like rage quit last time, because it's just like, I just want to go to another planet, and I keep going into space, and someone ambushes me, and there's 3 ships. I'm never going to be able to kill 3 ships with my basic ship I have now. So if I die, lose my stuff, and have to go back and get it, or I can just reload the save. And it's just like it's happened to me. Like if you're saying it's only happened a few times to you, I've played probably a fraction of what you have, and it's happened over and over again.
Yeah, because I think I've done like 4 or 5 different dogfights.
Yeah, it's more.
I also have a pretty fucking badass ship right now.
Okay,
so,
and I
like,
don't because it just keeps killing my like momentum and progress.
Right, yeah.
So
I think maybe you don't need to do this, but something you could maybe do is go like warp back a system, because I think what it seems to me what happens is the closer you get to the galactic core, the more like ships you are likely to encounter that will attack you, and the more likely you are to land on a planet that has like frenzied sentinels that are more of an issue and stuff like that. So maybe like your ship just isn't strong enough, because like for me, I feel like the dogfighting stuff has not been a big issue for me, because when it has happened, my ship is so powerful that I just completely fuck those guys, and then be like, haha, idiots, I don't know why you attacked me. Now I'm going to go down here and look at the weird like monkey bird things on this planet.
And I'm not one of the people who's super upset about the lack of tutorial stuff in this game.
Right, yeah.
Although I do think it's a problem here and there, and I think that is one area it's a problem, is what you just said to me. I would love to have known that.
Right.
Because it's a frustration that is potentially like game-breaking for me if I literally just can't get from one planet to the next. Yeah. And so it would be really nice to know those things. So that's just one.
I mean, I don't actually know if that's true or not. Okay. That's just what has been happening for me. Is the more systems I've jumped, the more it has happened. I don't know if that's actually true or not.
Yeah, but it's just those things, and just some of the mechanics that feel a little bit too built out to me. And I know some people are saying they feel not built out enough, and I get that. It's this weird parallax effect with this game and the people playing.
Because it is like the game is in a weird middle spot of like it is an exploration game first and foremost. I think by far that is the whole point of having this procedurally generated galaxies, that it's to be explorable. But at the same time, like it would be weird to have a galaxy that big that is so explorable and yet have so few mechanics that like nobody wants to play the game longer than Proteus, which is a game that's like 20 minutes long to beat, you know?
Yeah. And I do think, some of the mechanics I think are very smart. Like, one of my favorite parts of the whole game is just the beginning where you land and you have to figure something out. And I think the game actually tutorializes you a little bit more than it looks like, because one of the things I noticed is that one of the first elements you have to get your ship back up and running, for me at least, was way off in the distance.
Yeah, Iridium. I think it does that a lot. Yeah, I think
and that's so smart because it makes you go on this big grand journey across the planet.
Yeah, before you can have the crutch of your ship to lean on to go longer distances, you have to do the trek.
And I think that's really smart, and it's one of my favorite parts of the game. And those little elements where it's just the trek, and it's just getting lost, and those sorts of things. I love that, and I think those mechanics are very well calibrated. And then there are other things that feel less so. And again, there's just some tutorial stuff like, I don't know how to upgrade my inventory and I can't figure it out.
You have to. There are drop pods that are on the planet that you can find that if you go inside, it'll have a little exosuit like blueprint thingy in it. And if you click on it, you pay like 10,000 units or something, and you get an extra slot in your suit. There are actually a bunch of them, because this is how the game is designed, is that every planet has a bunch of them, so you could find them all over the place. But it took me a little bit to find my first one, and an easy way to find them is if you go to the little red signal thingies that you can go to the bypass chip and get it sort of detect one location on the planet. If you do shelter, it will sometimes pick those up because those are counted as shelters.
Okay, that's cool, and I think, especially talking to you, my plan is probably that I'm just going to start the game over at some point and kind of try to start a little fresh, maybe, and have a little more direction in my directionlessness.
Yeah,
and and so these are, I think, legitimate complaints, just in so much as I think the game could give you just a slightly more direction, just to make it more playable.
And the mechanics could definitely be more polished. I think those complaints are absolutely legitimate, and I have them as well. But it's such a minor complaint in the scope for me of what the game does so well that I'm totally fine with fiddling with a slightly could be a little bit better inventory and combat mechanics that aren't great, because the most of the time when I'm playing the game, I feel like I'm just so immersed in, I want to see what's over this next hill, and what creature is making this sound I'm hearing, and the ground is shaking. I turn around and there's a huge duck-billed dog creature that's 5 times as big as I am, and some of the animals that I have seen come out of their algorithm are really special. They are. I saw one of my favorite ones. I called it a beholder because it sort of looked like the beholder monster from D&D. So you'll kind of have a perspective if you know what that looks like. But this kind of almost looks like a kind of a brain-looking thing on tentacles. But what's funny is that this thing, it looked like in my like headcanon of it, this creature was like in this point in its evolutionary development where it was halfway between developing like gas bags that allowed it to float and it having to walk on land with its tentacles, because its walking animation was either glitched or there was like something weird with how the different pieces work together, because it like just had this crazy like kind of waddle across the land, like just flailing all of its tentacles super quickly. Like some of those kinds of animals, or like I found one that was like this little tiny dog looking thing with like a bird head that like was just all over the place, and I would like land on the planet and like go into a building to find like some schematics and stuff, and I would come out and they would just be all like kind of like running around my ship and stuff. Like those moments of when the algorithms work out and the planet you've landed on is cool and it has cool life. Like the game feels like magic, you know?
Absolutely, and I haven't had as many of those moments as I would like, because I wound up starting in a really ugly galaxy that was just sort of gray
solar
and
system.
Dead, and so
you said galaxy again.
I'm sorry, because in most video games, the size of those solar systems would be called galaxies.
Yeah, like in Mass Effect. Yeah.
Yes, so it's like you have to rework your vocabulary to talk about this as a game. You know. But no, I found an animal called a what I called a space platypus, and it looked exactly like that name suggests.
Good.
So just things like that are fun.
Yeah, going back really quick to the like people having to adjust their vocabulary, this is something that has been driving me fucking crazy, is people using the word universe and galaxy interchangeably talking about this game, and like all the different websites that have all these different articles about like, this is the fastest way to get to the center of the universe in No Man's Sky. It's like, you're not trying to get to the center of the universe, you're trying to get to the center of the galaxy. It says it like all the time in the top of the map. It's like, that's the way to the galactic core. You can't, there is no such thing as the center of the universe. You cannot get to the center of the universe. That's not how the universe works. Everywhere in the universe is the center of the universe. Read a fucking science book, you idiots. It's driving me nuts. I'm going insane.
No, I get it. And on a related note, I think, for several critics I've seen make reviews of this, it seems like they're cut off for like, I'm going to review the game once I've hit the galactic core.
Yeah.
I think that's a terrible way to think about it.
Yeah.
Because I know that's an ultimate goal. It's a goal I personally don't care about in this game. Like, if I get there, that'll be great. But for me, like, if I had a job, like, as a game critic, and I told myself, I can't review this until I get to the galactic core, and I had to grind No Man's Sky,
that is the wrong way to play the game.
I'd kill myself. It would feel like an awful game if you were playing it that way, and I'd say it's not necessarily that the game is awful, you're playing it kind of awfully, if that's, you're trying to grind a game that is inherently a kind of anti-grinding.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, because because this is a thing about the game. This is what is a legitimate criticism about the game, one that I don't really share because of how much of a technological feat it is, but like, people got so bought into the sort of like infinity of what the game sort of like is marketed as, because that's the good effective way to market the game, and they've been sort of feel like they've been promised infinity, and then they got a video game, and there are realities of like, this is a 20-person team. It wouldn't matter if it was a 5,000-person team making this game. You cannot generate enough assets for the game for everything to actually feel completely unique. Like, there's repetition in the game. Every planet has like the same kinds of structures on it. Like, it has the same like runes and stuff. It has like some of the plants repeat because like some of the plants repeat because they have like a specific function. Like, a plant like that looks like that is going to have zinc in it, so that you can just identify that information visually from a distance and make exploring the planet easier. Like, every planet's going to have plutonium on it and thanium-9 on it because it's needed to fuel your ship. Every planet's going to have carbon on it, basically. I think there's some moons that don't, because some moons don't have any life on them at all. But it is a video game, and you will see the same shelter designs, and you will see the same like little like landing pads that are trading posts. You will see the same like drop pods that have upgrades in them. You will like see that same stuff, and you will see creatures that look very similar, and you will have like planets that look very similar, because the game is not creating content out of nothing. It is procedurally generated in the sense that all the different individual sections, like think of like all the pieces that the game could be as like Lego pieces. All of those Lego pieces have been made individually by the game's artists. What the huge technical hurdle and what is a huge technical accomplishment, I think, of the game is that they designed an algorithm that intelligently takes all these different Lego pieces that don't automatically fit together in different ways to create different planets. And you just have to have enough Lego pieces to like give the planets a sense of being unique. But at the same time, you are going to see repetition. You are going, again, and it's the more designed things like some of like the specific resources and the structure, the man-made or alien-made structures that you encounter on the planets, those are pre-made because the algorithm isn't designed to tackle it. And I'd like... It is a legitimate criticism to say, like, well, sometimes it's frustrating that I landed on another planet that feels very similar to the previous planet I landed on. At the same time, like, that's going to happen. I don't really understand what your expectation was coming into this game, because it's not like there's another game that does not have that issue. Every game that has tried space exploration as a big thing, like, good look at Mass Effect, and even the small scale that Mass Effect 1 handles it on, has a massive amount of repeating structures and repeating, like, landscapes and stuff like that, because it is physically, humanly impossible to design that much unique content. And I think, like, personally, my experience with the game has been that the algorithm has done an incredible job at crafting this universe and having it in, like, I've had seen a couple of creatures that were kind of broken. I saw one that was completely broken, that was just, and I never saw another one of those animals to know if, like, they were always broken, but I found one weird-looking hippopotamus thing with wings that was just clipped into the ground and freaking out. But other than that, like, the environments work. I can navigate the environments, and like, some of the planets are filled with oceans of acid. Some of them are completely barren. Some of them are very Earth-like. Like, there is a very wide variety of planets and a huge wide variety of different flora and fauna that the game puts out.
Absolutely. I mean, you talk about those magical experiences. I was almost happy that my first solar system was very barren and not very interesting, because when I got to my second solar system and I got to, like, the first planet there, it was sort of one of those bright yellowish planets with some water and life and stuff. I don't think there were even animals on my first few planets. And that was like, oh, okay, I'm starting to get it.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I haven't seen a ton of variants yet, but I also haven't seen a lot of the game yet. So I'm liking that. And again, the biggest thrill is just jumping from one planet or solar system to another and just trying to see what's over there. And as you say, I think that is the most impressive thing to me, is that planets are navigatable. That you don't have just areas that are just, like, broken and you can't get over with the tools you have.
Yeah, and you never, like, hit a wall that says you can't go past here because we didn't build anything past here, you know?
And obviously there are parts of the games where they stealthily hide loading screens and things like that.
Yeah, like when you warp to another system.
But it feels very seamless. Yeah. And that's part of the sleight of hand that the game is operating on. I mean, you know, I'm kind of thinking about this because if I'm going to make any comparison between Final Fantasy X and this, one thing I'll just say is that whenever you play a game or watch a movie or anything that is trying to do something that hasn't been done before, there are going to be imperfections.
Yes.
And I'm just thinking about that with Final Fantasy X. Like, yeah, it's easy to go back and make fun of some of the voice acting and the staging and stuff.
Right.
But this was like the birth of 3D cinematic storytelling in video games. You wouldn't get to have some of the sophistication we have now if games like this didn't try it out first, and are as relatively accomplished as they are. And to me, that's a huge thrill of going back to older movies or video games or whatever, is seeing, like, how do they tackle challenges that we don't even have a perception of now because we're so far past them.
Yeah.
And I think someday people are going to look back at No Man's Sky and hopefully see that in it, that, man, I can't believe they made this in 2016 or something, when we have games that probably do what this is trying on a totally different scale.
Yeah, exactly. This is the first step. And that is, like, the thing I want to encourage people listening to this and people playing the game to do, is that if you do, like, if you are getting bogged down and, like, focusing on the details so much, the way that I feel like a lot of the very negative reactions have been, like, maybe the game is just not for you, but, like, two, like, maybe, like, stop and try to engage the game on a different level than the way that you play most games, because this is not like most games. It is a weird niche title that is doing something that nothing has ever done before. I've never seen anything even close to something like this. Most space games that try a sort of simulated galaxy are entirely just you and your spaceship flying around, and, like, that's, like, those games can be cool and fun, like Elite Dangerous, which I played a little bit of, which is, like, has a simulated Milky Way galaxy, but it's all spaceship stuff. I think they added some sort of, like, you can drive a rover on moons to look for elements and stuff. It's not, they're not full simulated planets with their own ecosystems and their own life and stuff like that. There's nothing like that. Plus, with this sort of, like, very artistic take on it, that it's not just the Milky Way galaxy, it's the Euclid galaxy. It is their own galaxy that has its own sort of rules, some of its own elements, and it feels like it is an artistic science fiction sort of world that you are dumped into, and it's not just trying to simulate reality as it is trying to make a statement about space and about space, both in terms of outer space and just space in general, the physical thing, and it's trying to make those things, like, as a thematic artistic statement, because it's a thematic artistic kind of game. And I think, like, it should be engaged with on on that level. The frustrating thing is that it does have these more AAA kind of elements couched in it. It does have the survival elements that are not always perfect, and there are other games that do that kind of stuff better, but nothing does what No Man's Sky does well at all, bar none.
No, absolutely, and I do think it's tough to know, it probably had to be released this way just to be viable as a production, to get it out as a $60 game in stores that you could buy. But I do think the ideal version of this game is almost like one of Sony's summer play titles or something.
Yeah, something that's like a $15 to $20 title that wouldn't have the kind of expectations on it, I think, would have been received incredibly well. It would have blown up the world when it launched instead of blown up the world when it was announced, and then had all this energy from the hype around it that then has just turned into this really vicious backlash by a huge portion of the audience.
Absolutely, because this is no different than when a sort of mildly experimental film or an avant-garde-ish kind of narrative film gets into the mainstream somehow, and then people are just baffled by it. This happens, a couple times a year, I feel like, with movies.
Right.
And it's always sort of frustrating if you're engaging that movie at its level, and people are like, well, I went to see it in a multiplex, so why was there the 20 minutes under the tree or something?
Yeah, and I went to the bathroom for 5 minutes, halfway through, and I missed this part, and I was eating popcorn, watching it like it was a Marvel movie or something. Yeah.
And that's understandable, obviously, because there's a sort of language and expectation we have for mainstream media. No Man's Sky is sort of, by definition, not a mainstream game, and yet it has entered the mainstream for understandable reasons. And, of course, it is this weird, frustrating chemistry that erupts when something like that happens. And so do you want to talk a little bit about sort of the cultural phenomenon of the game?
Man, it's such a huge thing. Like I said, there's some specific things that are minor, but that do drive me crazy, like people saying universe was it's not fucking. That's not how. You don't. If you don't understand that there's no such thing as a center of the universe, you don't understand what the Big Bang is. Go back and learn what the Big Bang is, because you may think you understand what it means. You actually don't. But so stuff like that drives me crazy. But the bigger thing is and part of this is the fault of Sony and the advertising and the marketing, and I totally understand that if it wasn't positioned in that way, it wouldn't have this backlash. At the same time, it shouldn't have this backlash, because people should be able to put those expectations aside. They should be savvy enough to understand where marketing exaggerates things, because all marketing exaggerates things. That's what marketing is. And put that aside and engage with the game on its own level. The way that, just because a movie has a bad trailer doesn't mean it's going to be a bad movie, or just because it has a good trailer doesn't mean it's going to be a good movie. You have to ignore how the movie's been marketed and just go see the fucking movie and engage with it on that level. And I feel like people have not done that with No Man's Sky. I think people didn't do that with No Man's Sky well before it came out. I think people took the promises of 18 quintillion planets way too literally at first, and just sort of went frothing at the mouth, crazy at the idea of this is this endless game. Austin Walker at Vice, to name drop him again, he wrote a very great small piece, but a piece that touches on this idea of people want this. I think this is very much true, especially in the post-Minecraft world. People want this game that is the one game, that is the endless game that they can always play, that is always fresh, always new, that they don't need to buy any other game in their life. They don't need to buy any other media, that it's this one game that is always pure, always perfect. Is if there's all new uniquely generated content around every corner that you've never seen before, and you can always engage with it, and it's always fresh. It's that's not possible. That's not a problem with No Man's Sky's algorithms. That's not a problem with the technology behind No Man's Sky. That is a problem with human psychology, that humans cannot be satisfied with anything. If we did, we would just be dead. Life forms, to go back to the philosophical kind of edge of No Man's Sky, life is about consuming. That is why when No Man's Sky, you go around planets and you go consume the materials on the planet. The reason why that is a fucking mechanic is because that's what life forms do. That's what the life forms on that planet would be doing if they were designed to do that, because that would take a lot of resources and a lot of artificial intelligence stuff on the video game resource side. But we as people consume things constantly. We consume media, we consume food, we just consume energy, and we process energy. That's what life is on a very fundamental level, is a factory that consumes matter and converts that into energy in its body. So you're never going to be satisfied with the one true game. You're never going to be satisfied with anything. It's never going to be so perfect.
It's like we talked about this last year, the backlash to Fallout 4 and some other open world games like this, where people would go online and say, man, I fucking hate this game. It's so repetitive. I'm so sick of it.
I played it for 120 hours and I can't stand this game anymore. And Destiny had the exact same problem. And No Man's Sky is going to have this fucking problem too. Is that like, people don't know when to stop playing shit because they're just consuming, like, it's the reason why, like, we, as, like, Americans and stuff, overeat all the time. Because you don't know when to stop. You're just stuffing yourself with this game over and over and over again. You're just, like, playing this game, and not enjoying it anymore. But for whatever, you're compelled to just keep on consuming this thing. And then you come out the other side of it, just be like, I fucking hate Destiny. I played it for 2,000 hours, and this game is the worst game I've ever played. And it's like, yeah, well, for like 1,000 hours, it was your favorite thing in the world. The problem is that, like, because there's no point where, like, the game just tells you, hey, stop, you beat it, it's done, it's over, here's the last cutscene, here's the credits of the game, here's the game over screen, now go home, like go outside, go do something else, like, you have beaten the game. When the game doesn't provide that, sections of the audience will just over-consume the game.
Yes.
And No Man's Sky is that to, like, 100-fold.
And, I think I've talked about this before. This is a problem that I think, it's not just the audience. I think a lot of game design chases that desire.
Yeah, it's with, like, collectibles and 100%, like, trophies and stuff like that.
And it's part of why, I've talked about how burnt out I am on open world games in general. I don't think No Man's Sky is chasing that exactly.
I think it's almost like thematically, like, sort of talking about that attitude we have and saying, like, you can't consume this all. You idiot. You are just another life form among all these other life forms.
I think it's very implicitly asking you to play this for however long you want to play it.
And put it down when you're done with it.
Yeah, I think it's not, they're not out there saying there's 18 quintillion worlds and saying go find them all.
Yeah, exactly. They're saying that's what was my point with, like, there's a reason why it's 18 quintillion and not 18 quadrillion or trillion or billion or million or thousand. Like, it is 18 quintillion planets because no one will ever find them all. Our species will never find them all. It's like, it's so big to tell you can't do all that. And it's like, and that's one of the things where, like, if you feel like you are done with the game after you've explored, like, 2 or 3 systems and, like, you're kind of done with it, I think you can put the game down after that. I know that's, like, a harder pill to swallow because the game is $60. But, like, still, like, if you are done with something, you should be done with something. And I think, like, you can get the bulk of what No Man's Sky has to offer, honestly, out of a couple of solar systems. And past that, it's just the satisfaction of mining and exploring the world and just living in No Man's Sky longer. But, like, all the stuff that we're talking about, like, I'm nowhere near the galactic center or the galactic core. I'm nowhere near the center of the universe or whatever fucking people think they're going to do in this game. Like, but I still feel like I have gotten all of this sort of, like, thematic material and all this sort of introspection out of this game that I wanted to get. And if that's enough for you, fucking put the game down or you will resent it for the rest of your life. Learn the lessons we all learned from Destiny.
Totally, and I think hopefully we all hit some point where we have the self-awareness. I do worry. I think there's a thing in game culture where I think we all are starting to lack that self-awareness.
Yeah.
And designers are chasing it and people are asking for it. And it's such a weird thing to think about art. Like, can you imagine if, like, in the high art world, if you were trying to create the one painting that we ever have to look at?
Yeah, it's like
stupid.
It's like, you just have some person that's like, I can't believe I paid, like, $15 to get into this art gallery. I only looked at this painting for like 5 minutes. It's not worth my money.
Exactly. And so this whole thing of, like, the one game, which I think you're totally right. Everyone wants that. And to me, as someone who tries to get a sense of the depth and breadth of games in a given year, the same as I do with movies and other kinds of media, that's such a frustrating worldview. And I generally don't even want to play those games. Like, I like open world games when I feel like they're fairly directed and they're finishable and that sort of thing, but I don't like the ones that just feel like they are kind of just shilling you to just spend a lot of time running around in their circles.
Yeah, and just, like, give you 5,000 collectibles like Assassin's Creed Syndicate, and just, like, it's somebody like, no, I don't want to do all this. I'm not having fun getting all the collectibles, Assassin's Creed Syndicate, but you keep on putting them on my map and putting on all the progress meters. I don't want to fill your progress meters anymore. I'm sorry, it's not me.
It's a fine line, right? Because you want to have, with these kinds of games, a world that is open enough that a person can spend as much time as is good for them in it.
Yeah.
But I feel like you need to stop it from being so open that you're going to make people hate it just by virtue of its own size.
Yeah.
And of course, No Man's Sky, as you say, exists in this special kind of in-between space where it is effectively infinite to our perception of the world and of time.
Yeah.
And so that implies on its own that it's not telling you to see all of it.
Yeah. Like, there is almost a part of me that wishes that they had, like, they gave you that objective of reaching the galactic core and all that stuff at the beginning, but then they made it actually impossible to get to the galactic core because it's just too far away. And, like, it's theoretically possible, but no technology in the game is fast enough to make it so that's, like, the fastest you can reach there is in, like, 200 years or something. Like, I really wish that the game was just designed in that way. It's just like, because to me that would be the ultimate. And who knows? Like, maybe that is basically what's at the galactic core. Might just be like, oh yeah, this is just one galaxy. You feel like you've gone so far, but in reality, like, one galaxy is nothing in the scope of the universe. Like, the universe is composed of galactic clusters, which are clusters of hundreds of thousands of galaxies. So, you know, good on you. You explored one. Like, you've explored one galaxy a little bit that had quintillions of planets. Now we've got quintillions of galaxies that have quintillions of planets. So fuck off.
Yeah.
Game over. Roll credits.
No, and it's kind of this question of, are there things the game could have done more to sort of clearly direct people to see sort of that interpretation? I think in some ways,
probably
yes. In some ways, no.
It's not, like I said, it's not a perfect game, and I will not try to argue that. But what I will say, and I'll say this over and over again, is that what it does well, it does so well, and nothing has ever even done it before. It way outshines the issues that it has, because everything has issues.
It's really glorious and impressive in its imperfection.
Yeah, I love it to death.
Awesome.
Yeah. You know, I've got a question for you really quick as we wrap up this conversation. At the beginning of the game, there's like weird like red orb thing that is the Atlas thing. When you talk to that, did you submit yourself to the red orb and its guidance?
I think so.
Yeah, because I didn't. I said, okay. Fuck off, red orb.
What does it do? I don't actually. Because I said fuck off, I don't actually know what it does. I think it's like kind of the main story path of like it's a little bit more guided and will give you like it's the Atlas objectives. Like you might not even have it like fucking. I don't know how other people are playing this game. Yeah. I kind of just did it on a whim. Like I said, I think I'm going to maybe start fresh with it at some point.
If you will, now that I've talked to you about it, you will recognize it if you start it again.
Yeah.
You should probably say yes, but also, fuck that red orb. I don't want it giving me waypoints and telling me what to do. It's my sky, bitch. Get out of my way. Fucking red orb thinks it's God. You're not God, I'm God. This is my galaxy.